Well, greetings, imagination connoisseurs. Once again, it is I, your Duke of Dope Discourse, your master of fun and wonder, your viceroy of verisimilitude, your archbishop of Banterbury, your chancellor of cheerfulness, and, of course, your existential Mr. Rogers, whatever that means. That's right, Robert Meyer Burnett here, coming at you, Robcasting at you from the Robservatory, which I'm renovating, putting in some speakers. I mean, you'll be able to come in here and actually, there'll be a pretty rockin' 5.1 surround sound system in here with a kick and sub soon. Yes, that's true. There's just, it's awe-inspiring. Yeah, so that's coming. Today, ladies and gentlemen, you know what? I wasn't even going to go on today. But I'm so giddy with excitement, like a little schoolboy, about the successful launch of Dragon Crew, the Crew Dragon, by SpaceX and NASA. I figured I would talk about being the Chancellor of Cheerfulness. How can I not talk about this? It's amazing. For the first time in 9 years, Americans were launched into space. Since the end of the shuttle program from American soil, we no longer have to hitch a ride on the Soyuz capsules. We now have an economic alternative. SpaceX stuck this launch today and the landing. They landed, the booster stage landed at sea. It was amazing. Second stage burns up, obviously, because you can't really recover it. It's not cost effective. But so far, this launch went off without a hitch, and in about 17 hours, the Crew Dragon will dock with the International Space Station, where our crew, Bob and Doug, will be staying at the ISS for at least 6 weeks, and then they will return home via automation. I mean, the Crew Dragon is supposed to be mostly automated in terms of how it flies, and normally it will go into orbit and dock with the International Space Station completely automated. Like the pilots, you won't need to pilot Crew Dragon, but it is on manual control right now, and they're going to be doing tests, and then they'll kick in the automatic controls, and that will take them to the ISS, where they will dock. This is the dawn of a new age, ladies and gentlemen. It is not to be taken lightly. This is truly the age of the privatization, the commercialization of space, and it's no longer in just governmental control. And kudos to NASA, and kudos to Elon Musk and all of the people that work at SpaceX for doing this. I mean, it's amazing, and it is a great giant leap forward for mankind, and it's very exciting. After everything else that's going on in the world, we're still in the midst of a pandemic. There's all kinds of civil unrest in the nation because of an ongoing problem that we have not solved in 400 years. So let's hope that maybe what's happening now will lead to discussions to start really addressing the underlying problem, which shouldn't be the color of somebody's skin, but how those people have been treated systemically and institutionally for 400 years. You know, as I tweeted, you know how these things don't happen, how we can stop these things from happening. Let's not kill innocent black Americans anymore. There's a start. But yes, so after all of what's going on, it was such a triumph to watch. I was so excited. I've been a space freak, a real space freak, since I was a very little kid. I have Saturn V rockets here. I've got miniatures of the space. I mean, I don't have real Saturn V rockets. I have die-cast miniatures of Saturn V rockets, and of course, shuttles, all kinds of space things, Japanese space probes, all here in the Robservatory. And it's always fun to be renovating. It's starting to look really cool in here. Not just what you can see, but all around me. All around me. It's exciting. Anyway, I wanted to share an article that was published just after liftoff today. This was published at 12:36 Pacific Daylight Time today, which is amazing. And this was on TechCrunch. I mean, talk about topical. I mean, obviously, it was probably, they had this ready to go. But still, I thought it was kind of neat. Here is the article on TechCrunch. Where did I put it? It is here, so I will read it with you. Hold on. Hold, please. Here you go. Here's the article. SpaceX makes history with successful first human space launch. Not of all time, but obviously for SpaceX. I mean, you know, it really is a monumental achievement. This is by Daryl Etherington, and I said it was published at 12:36 today, so just about an hour and a half ago. Look at this. Look at this. There she goes, ladies and gentlemen. I got to tell you, this excites me. Make all the phallic jokes you want. They're all true because my phallus was ready to take off watching this. Let me just tell you. SpaceX made history today, flying NASA astronauts Doug Hurley and Bob Behnken to space aboard its Crew Dragon spacecraft using a Falcon 9 rocket. The launch, titled Demo 2, is for the final demonstration mission in the human rating process of SpaceX Crew Dragon and Falcon 9, meaning that once this mission is complete, the launch vehicle will finally be certified for operational use for regular transportation of people to space. This was the second attempt after an initial launch try last Wednesday was scrubbed due to weather conditions. This is the first time ever that humans have been aboard a SpaceX vehicle as it launched. To date, SpaceX Falcon 9 and Falcon Heavy rockets have succeeded in delivering multiple cargo payloads to orbit, but Behnken and Hurley are the first people to make the trip with the private spaceflight company. SpaceX also successfully landed its first stage booster from the Falcon 9 used today, which means it will recover the first private spacecraft booster that has ever delivered human astronauts to space, which is also not something to be taken lightly. The fact that they are returning rockets from orbit back to Earth onto platforms at sea is nothing short of astonishing, and they do it all the time now. NASA created the Commercial Crew Space Program to spur the development of private launch vehicles that would also be able to serve commercial customers in addition to the agency in order to defray the cost of launch overall. Both SpaceX and Boeing ended up placing winning bids on the Commercial Crew contracts and have subsequently developed human launch systems, though SpaceX is the first to actually fly people on their vehicle after Boeing encountered some unexpected issues in their last uncrewed demonstration flight. Yes. And there are the astronauts. This spaceship has touch pads, ladies and gentlemen. How cool is that? It's been multiple decades since a human took off from U.S. soil on a brand new launch vehicle. This is a brand new launch vehicle. When they mean that, it's been decades since everything we were going up with shuttles. They were old shuttles. And this is also the first time anyone has flown to space from an American launch site since the Space Shuttle program was officially retired in 2011. Returning U.S. spaceflight capabilities also means NASA won't have to rely on Russia's Roscosmos and its Soyuz spacecraft exclusively to transport its astronauts to the International Space Station, and could save more than $30 million per astronaut per trip as a result. Today's launch kicks off a multi-week mission for Behnken and Hurley, which involves a rendezvous with the ISS around 19 hours from now, meaning, about 17 now. Crew Dragon will first take around 30 minutes to perform a manual control test, wherein Behnken and Hurley will take over and fly the spacecraft themselves. This isn't what would normally happen on a normal Crew Dragon mission, since the spacecraft is designed to make the trip to the ISS on its own, operating entirely in an automated manner. After that manual control test, Crew Dragon will once again take over and then fly the remainder of the way to the ISS, where it'll dock itself with an entry hatch on the station. From there, Behnken and Hurley will transfer over to the station, where they're set to stay for a period of between 6 and 16 weeks, depending on NASA's determination of how long the mission should last. This is somewhat dependent on staffing requirements on board the ISS, since currently there's only one U.S. astronaut there in an operational capacity, and Hurley and Behnken will be tasked with assisting with experiments and maintenance on the station. Look at that. Look at that. Oh, it's glorious. Once it's determined when they're coming back, they'll climb aboard the Crew Dragon, seal it up, and then detach from the station. This return part of the program is also designed to be fully automated, with the spacecraft performing the necessary boost-back engine firing to control its re-entry and descent. Once in the atmosphere, it'll release its parachutes to slow the fall back to Earth and coast to a landing in the Atlantic Ocean, where SpaceX crews will recover the capsule and provide the astronauts their ride back to dry land. SpaceX plans to begin flying astronauts to the ISS for the fully regular operational missions later this year, if all goes well, and it has also signed agreements to begin offering berths to paying passengers for Crew Dragon space tourist trips with an extremely high price tag as early as next year. As somebody who's loved space my whole life, it is very exciting to be alive watching this. The promise of, what I believe that as a kid, I wanted to see humanity become a spacefaring race. Obviously, traversing the distances, even in our solar system, are enormous. But this is the first step. I learned from Santa Claus is coming to town, put one foot in front of the other, and soon you'll be walking out the door. Well, this is that first step to start humanity on its walk out the door. I know Elon Musk has Mars ambitions. Other people have moon ambitions. And I think, barring some catastrophic failure on my body's part, I might actually see the establishment of a base on another planet in my lifetime. And I think that is amazing. And to celebrate, I have this. Let's see if I can get it. This is a Voodoo... New Belgium. It's Voodoo. The brewery Voodoo Ranger. That's what it is. This is a Voodoo Ranger. I have for this occasion. Starship IPA, New Belgium. I'm gonna crack it here, and with you guys, I'm going to share a toast. A toast to SpaceX, to NASA, to America, to humanity. What a day for all of us. I mean, despite the fact that there is unrest, and there are people getting hurt, and people still dying of COVID-19. You take the good with the bad. That is life. So here's to that. Here's to all of you. And here's to humanity's future, which I think is so bright. I'm wearing, well, not shades, but glasses. So I've never had this particular beer before. It's quite tasty. Anyway, I just thought I'd share that with you because I was excited and I figured I would share my excitement. Yo. But beyond that, not a lot of news happening. My excitement, my day is consisting of going through comics that I'm pulling to get graded. I'm about ready. I'm at the point where I'm taking anything I want out of my long boxes, and I just feel like I should take my comic long boxes and put them on the front lawn with a sign that says "Free Comics." I'm about there, which is kind of funny. But anyway, I got some letters to read, ladies and gentlemen. I got some letters to read, and this first one comes from Pedro Ferreira. I think I got the right Pedro. Pedro is a imagination connoisseur, and I always see him on Twitter. Ferreira, I think it's Ferreira. Yeah, Pedro. Hi, Rob. Uh-oh. I hope you don't mind my letter. It's my birthday today, and I wanted to get your thoughts on a couple of things, which include me growing old. I'm 37 today, and I'm still trying to forge a career. I've had a slightly crazy work life. I did well in university, but even in my best attempts, never managed to create a path towards a media-related goal, whether that was film, TV, or video games. I've always been an imaginative person, so I know I'm good for something creative. I have an eye for detail, which might explain why I have a history of roles which required archive-based work. Having neurodiversity, as they call it now, brings issues that have put me at a disadvantage, like dyslexia. Only last year did I find out I have autism and Asperger's. This would explain a lot of reasons why I never got the career opportunities others did. Interacting, making good focused decisions, and making contacts are what it takes for a person to succeed. In that sense, I've fallen through the cracks. I've always been the last person to get picked for a team. Part of my Asperger's is I'm either a total introvert or too much of an extrovert, so I unintentionally can wind people up the wrong way. People need either a lot of patience or an understanding of me to not find me annoying. It's not easy to make friends. It's all over the years impacted my health, as for the past 10 years I've suffered from a health anxiety disorder. I've never smoked and I don't drink. I've been told again and again there is nothing wrong with my health physically, but my disorder means there's always that fear. I get very exhausting, debilitating symptoms regardless if I stay in or go out. Now I'm looking for my next role, hoping to get back into work, and let's see how that goes. I haven't done too badly in that I have a degree in film and TV studies and done all these work roles, but it has to be said I could have done better had I the support growing up. I don't want to sound entitled, but it frustrates me when I see how popular others on social media or YouTube have become with less skills in specific subjects than I have. I've always felt that I have so much to say and do within film and TV, but I lack the competency or focus to achieve it. When it comes to TV in retrospect, the next generation always appealed to me the most because those characters are the ones I wished I could have hung around with. They were my friends. One of the reasons I have an imagination is because of the next generation. As for Star Trek, there's been the repeated talk about how CBS cannot yet justify spending the money remastering DS9 and Voyager. My feeling on this was crowdfunding specific seasons of each Star Trek series. At the very least, some seasons will be remastered. Since I was born, I loved imagining and writing things. I hate writing reviews of film and video games no one will end up reading. I have no outlet. Yet I'm so pleased with the end result, like I've accomplished something useful. I'm probably better in the long-term script writing. I'm probably better in the long-term script writing, yet have never been helped with focus or encouragement to continue. When I was 13, I managed to create and plan in my mind a 7-season spin-off series of Sliders, episode by episode for the first 4 seasons. In university, for my degree, I wrote a pilot for an optimistic sci-fi adventure TV series. It seems a shame to let that go to waste. As for the second idea, especially, I put a lot of myself into that. My only fear of one day putting these ideas forward is that they'll be rejected for being too derivative, even though they're fun. I don't mind having the next stage of a career journey, but my main issue right now is finding a job, agent, or career professional to put me in the correct direction and not on another dead-end track as I've constantly done in the past. So my letter eventually comes to the main question, the one I've wanted to use this letter to ask you. Perhaps this is a question that has already been asked many times already, but how feasible financially do you think it would be to remaster the mid-90s game Star Trek Borg for current consoles and PC? Star Trek Borg and its big sister game Star Trek Klingon were FMV games, the former directed by James Conway, I remember, and the latter directed by Jonathan Frakes. The music for the Borg game was done by Dennis McCarthy. Presumably the footage for these games exists in the CBS vault. If CBS finds remastering 7 seasons of DS9 and Voyager too much for their pockets, Star Trek Borg, for example, wouldn't need a lot of money spent on it. Interior visual effects consist of some phaser fire, Borg shield effects, and the Borg overlay that appears in the last part of the game. That would need to be created. Exterior shots consist of stock footage from TNG. I believe a shot of Sisko's ship being destroyed from the DS9 pilot and some Excelsior-type effects. It doesn't look like too much compared to the entire TV show. But the Borg game, they could add the Borg Encyclopedia that originally was included, and a retrospective documentary could be made for it by you and Roger Lay. Your question will be, but what about getting the rights from the developers? Both games were developed by Simon & Schuster, who are now owned by CBS, although CBS wants to sell Simon & Schuster, so CBS don't have many excuses not to do this. Programming for the remaster is the most valid issue, I imagine. It does need a restoration, as the original Borg game on CDs had these thin, horrid scan lines fixed into the picture. Would like to know what your thoughts are on this and whether it's an idea that could be passed on to someone like Darren Doctorman, Mike Akuda, or the guys behind the motion picture restoration. Thanks for reading my letter. I'll try not to keep annoying you with my letters when others are in line who haven't sent one yet. Kind regards, Pedro. Well, first of all, Pedro, thank you for writing this letter. I think it's a great letter, and you're asking. There's 2 parts here. You know, you spend a long time explaining who you are, and I think we should address that. A lot of people in my own life have asked me about things like this. How do you succeed? Like how do you keep getting jobs, or how do you keep smiling? And I mean, I was lucky in that I didn't suffer. I mean, hell, I might have some weird kind of undiagnosed mental disease of some kind. I don't know, but I was lucky, and I can't tell you why, but I've always been outgoing, and I've always been interested. Mostly, I've been interested in people my whole life, even when I was a little kid, and I think that's why, to me, science fiction was appealing, because it was always about the possibilities of what people can do. And one of the things I loved about Star Trek was about what a group of people can do, and the fact that you had Kirk, Spock, and McCoy. I always loved that. I always wanted to have a group like that. I've always wanted to put together a group of people where we could all do things together. And when I was working on DVD special features in the early aughts, well, from 2004 to 2007, when I had a pretty big influx of cash, I put most of it into, which probably wasn't the wisest thing, but I put it mostly into the building. I was trying to build a group of people together that we could move forward, a production company, and we could all continue working. And it worked for a couple of years, like 3 years. It was pretty good. And everything that I had been building up to was working well. And then I had some, I would call them catastrophic business setbacks that were really no fault of my own, that I could not have seen coming. I wish I did, because I could have, I would have made plans to deal with that. So this group of people that I put together that I wanted to roll into, I mean, it was working. We had these great projects that we're working on. I had a great team of people, and we got the goal was to turn into a production company where we would make movies and television. I self-published a comic book. We were working on Chronicles of Narnia and Superman Returns with big budgets, and people were getting paid, and we had healthcare and everything, and then it was curtailed by a couple of different events that came together that were relatively catastrophic. I mean, I've kept the company going, but here's the thing. Tomorrow, Clint Eastwood turns 90 years old. I'm going to do a show on him tomorrow. It's going to be called Go Ahead, Make My Birthday. Clint Eastwood, 90 years old. He had Richard Jewell come out. It was nominated for Academy Award. Kathy Bates, nominated for Academy Award. In our world today, the idea that you're too old to do something, or you're too old to reinvent yourself, is simply not true. It doesn't exist. And look, I'm not saying that anybody. I've had friends of mine that are like, I like your YouTube show. I want to start a YouTube show. And I'm like, you should start a YouTube show. And then they realize that it seems like it's really easy, but it isn't. I mean, it's a grind, and it's hard to sit in front of a camera. And it is. I have to say, it's very strange for me to talk for 2 hours or 2+ hours and not get anything back. I mean, there's a live chat, but reading the letters and everything, I feel like I'm getting something back. But it's not easy. Not everybody can do it. And making your way in the entertainment business is a thankless, difficult task. I mean, there have been. I'm not a crier, I don't cry, but there have been many times when I've gone to bed either frustrated or questioning my sanity, like, what the hell am I doing? Why am I doing this? And you really want to. There have been many days when I wanted to throw in the towel or give up or whatever, and you keep going, and you keep persevering. Like, I didn't know last year that I would be doing, admittedly, some very small work on an animated series that's coming out later in the year. I wouldn't have known that. I worked with Kevin Rubio doing animated promos for Kids WB in the late 90s, but you just never know. And when you're in this business, I mean, would I have liked to continue writing and directing? Yes. Have I given up on that ambition? No. I mean, I read some of the script I was working on yesterday, but to tell you the truth, I have been working. I don't know if you guys know what Fiverr is, but I'm getting my entire this screenplay that I want to make into a movie next. I'm getting the whole thing. I'm storyboarding the entire movie, the whole thing, and it's it's kind of a pay as I go kind of a thing. But I'm putting it together, so you'll be able to sit down and I'm doing all my shots. I don't know if I'm ever going to be able to make this movie. I wanted to make this movie literally for 3 decades. Who knows if I'll ever get that opportunity? But I'm just putting my ducks in a row. We got Tango Shalom on the verge of something I'll be able to announce hopefully shortly. I've got Hills Run Red coming out. You have to keep going. And I understand you have mental issues you detailed for us, but here's the thing. It's really hard if you're outside of the business. I'm not going to lie. You can't. The idea that you're going to make a TV show or that you're going to make a movie or something. It's the odds are not forever in your favor. They're not. It's really, 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 really hard. It's really hard for people that are working in the industry, that are industry vets. I mean, remember, nobody wanted to make Mel Gibson's Passion of the Christ, even though he'd made Braveheart. Couldn't even get that done. He had to basically go self-finance it because it's next to impossible. And I don't mean to be discouraging. It's just next to impossible. However, in this day and age, we've never had as much at our fingertips. We have never had 4K cameras. You can get iPhone 10s, 11s. You can get lenses, 35 millimeter lens adapters that work for these cameras. We're carrying around 4K cameras in our pockets. You can make whole feature film with 2 of these. Maybe 1 if you want, but if you had 2, you can go much faster. It's incredible, the technology that we have, and it's all in the way that you employ the technology. And I would, if I were you, if you have a film degree and you want to get your work out there, look, I know it's cliche, but websites and starting these kinds of things, look at the people that are making, like, just as an example, Midnight's Edge. Whether you like the guys and girls over at Midnight's Edge or not, I stumbled across Midnight's Edge because I liked their videos. Like I liked Rob's narration, Andre's narration. I liked the way they put their videos together. I didn't know them from Adam. I just watched what they did. And no one is stopping anybody from doing that kind of work. And, you don't even have to be on camera. And I would say start slow, but figure out a way. Put yourself out there. Start your own YouTube channel and see where it takes you. Film analysis. I mean, evergreen film analysis. Like if you want to pick your favorite movies, and I mean, I've seen a lot more of those now because a lot of reviewers, like even Jeremy Johns or Chris Stuckman, they're going back and reviewing movies they hadn't reviewed before. It's like evergreen because everybody stumbles across movies and you're like, ooh, I wonder what someone said about that. And you go online and you're like, oh, here's 5 different reviews. I mean, I love watching the Critical Drinkers videos. Most of the time I agree with him. Sometimes I don't. But I really appreciate the reviews that the Critical Drinker does. I don't know what he looks like. If I saw him in a pub, I'd love to go up and buy him a drink. But I couldn't. I don't know what he looks like. Dave Cullen. I love Dave Cullen's videos. Again, these are people I didn't know, and yet I watched their material. And who were they 5 years ago before they started making videos? They were just blokes. And I would suggest that if you want to start, you got to start somewhere. Like everybody wants, I want to make a movie. I want to make a TV show. Well, that's the top of Mount Everest. And I would say start at the bottom and start your way up. Start working. Start doing what you need to do. And once you start, you'll find that the act of creation, it doesn't matter what it is. If you want to win an Academy Award and that's your goal, I would say stop. Stop with that right now. There's nothing wrong with wanting to win an Academy Award, but if that's your ultimate goal, it's too hard. I would say what you need to do is you like to say, you got to flash dance it. You got to take your passion and make it happen. I think that's what it said on the poster. But in my mind, I'm like, you got to flash dance this, bro. You got to take your passion and make it happen and figure out a starting point. Like I want to write the great American novel. Well, why not write a short story or 2 and then see where that goes? It truly is the journey. And I would suggest this attitude that you've fallen through the cracks, you know what, you could say that, but I keep going back to my favorite Dear Abby column that I ever read, which was a woman had written into Dear Abby, and she said, all my life I've wanted to be a doctor. and this is the way I remember it. And I'm 42 years old, and if I went through med school and my residency and did everything I needed to do, by the time I was a doctor, I'm going to be 50. And Dear Abby's answer was, you're going to be 50 anyway. Meaning that time is marching on every single day, and the only person that can change your lot in life is you. And depending on what it is you want to do, you should do it. You should start and pursue those goals every single day, because you never know where they're going to lead. Work begets work. You never know. You just never know. I mean, I didn't know what was going to happen when I started this YouTube show. I mean, now I get asked to. I was doing the Mainframe Comic-Con interviewing Lloyd Kaufman from Troma, and the actor who plays Piter de Vries, Mentat Piter de Vries, in Denis Villeneuve's Dune. I was doing that a couple hours ago, and that was 6 months ago. I wouldn't have been asked. Maybe I would have, but I wasn't. I don't think the guys who put on the Mainframe Comic-Con, which by the way is great. Let me give a shout out to them. I did 2 panels today. Remember, the Mainframe Comic-Con is actually going on live right now. It's going on live right now at Mainframe Comic-Con. You can look it up, live and online. It was a lot of fun. Tomorrow I will be interviewing Lisa Emery from Ozark. Oh my God, what a great villainess she is. And of course, Denethor himself, John Noble, from Fringe. How cool is that, And when you do things, work begets work. You just never know what you're going to do from day to day. But you got to get out there and do it, man. And again, that's what this community is for. If you start doing stuff, come and tell us. Josh Rosowskis, Josh Rosowskis also is disabled, and he's out there. He's killing it, crushing it, doing YouTube shows, talking about his favorite thing, which is professional wrestling. And he has not let his disabilities stop him from sharing his thoughts, getting out there, doing a show. And it's great to see him back. It's great to have him as a member of the Post-Geek Singularity community. And the one thing that you have that other people don't is you have this community. You have these people that will follow you. They will encourage you. And I think the greatest thing that we have going on here is the community that we've got. And it's terrific. So I think, Pedro, that if you do anything, you get to come back here. If you put up a movie review, you make a video, whatever it is you want to share with people, you have a built-in community that you can come to, whether you come to the live show and put in a link in the live chat, whether you send me a letter that I can read online like the one I just read, or you can go to the Post-Geek Singularity Facebook page or the Whining About Movies Facebook page, look up the Richard, and the Richard's all about helping promote whatever you're doing. And that's what you got to do. And think about it. Clint Eastwood still making movies at 90. The dude is going to be straight up 90 years old tomorrow. Unbelievable. So I don't know how helpful this is, but I think that is, you got to remember that. Now, the other thing, I don't know what the status is of that Borg game. I don't know where all of the materials are. Part of the reason that a lot of people don't understand that the reason that Deep Space Nine and Voyager, remember, the restorations, the restoration of Star Trek The Next Generation took 4 years and an army of people working every day, like 30 people. It was a huge undertaking, and it was enormous amounts of work, and you literally were going through hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of boxes of negatives and finding all the material. It is not an easy task, and Deep Space Nine and Voyager would be even more difficult. And it's a process. So you can't go in there and go, well, let's do 1 episode or 2 episodes. It doesn't work that way. You really have to have a pipeline, because what you're doing is you're setting up a post-production pipeline, and you're basically taking 7 seasons of TV shows through post-production again. And it's an enormous undertaking. So it's hard. And like with Borg, I don't know what the status is of that material. Who knows where it was stored? I mean, I don't think it's a bad idea. I don't think it's a bad idea at all. It's just a question of who would pay for it, and is there a market? The only way that money gets spent in the entertainment business, and the only way anybody puts up money in the entertainment business, is if they believe they can get a return on that investment. So it's a tough one. It's a tough one. So I don't know what to tell you other than that. I don't know if that's helpful, but maybe it is. Now, I got another letter. This comes from Jeffrey Mao. Dear Rob, I'm still relatively... actually, no, it's not Jeffrey Mao. It's Jeffrey Moy. Jeffrey Moy. I'm getting different things here. Jeffrey Moy. Dear Rob, I'm still relatively new to Robservations and found you after I was looking for a sane voice on Picard. I posted this on my first personal Facebook page, but I thought you might get a kick out of it. Another letter on what Picard could have been. Okay, I can't seem to drop the disappointment that is the Picard series, and I think that the character and we, the fans, deserve better. Changing nothing of what led Picard from resigning from Starfleet, the producers could still have made a great story that wasn't overly complicated and still character-focused, rather than the mess that was presented. Seeing how Star Trek loves to tackle problems we have today and show how they can evolve beyond them has always been what made Star Trek special to me. The thing that bugged me about the start of the Picard series is where they started him. This great commander of a starship was now apparently nothing without Starfleet. He goes away to rot on his family vineyard with his dog you only see once or twice in the series. And this struck me as really disappointing. I would have thought that this highly principled and intelligent man would still be out there making the galaxy a better place in his own way, much like former President Carter. My God, that is such a great analogy. And that's where I would begin. Picard, having resigned from Starfleet over the Federation's unwillingness to help the Romulans after the Synth Revolt, is found far from home on a distant world, just inside the neutral zone that lies between the former Romulan Empire and the Federation. He's helping resettle refugees that are scattering and looking for some place where they can live in safety and peace. The Romulan star that went nova and collapsed is spewing deadly radiation for light years and has fragmented the Romulan Empire, causing disarray and the rise of civil war, making a place for warlords and fear. Picard has been working tirelessly all this time and has found love with a Romulan woman. This character could be the same one that was part of the pair of housekeepers that were introduced in the series. She has a full Romulan son who is now grown and has his own views. This could be the space elf actor, but not space elf. Space, oh, I love that. Space Legolas. The brother is there as well because he seemed pretty fun. This is Picard's family. Other characters from the show could be here as well. Rafi, who joined Picard after her own disillusionment of Starfleet, could have her own problems, but would serve as an arc in overcoming them. And the captain of the ship would still be there with his smarmy attitude. With these two characters, we are now crewed up. Some support characters on the ship could be around, or maybe they're all holograms. Story-wise, I would focus on Picard and the now risky move of settling Romulans in the neutral zone. How will the Federation react? Does the Federation see them as a threat? Maybe the Federation sends Starfleet to kick them off. Picard will have to face off against the organization that made him. Then I would have had smaller stories from the other side and explore the world left after the Nova. Smaller stories of civil war, rebellion, and survival. Picard could even try and make some sort of truce with all the parties by the end of the first season. After all, he's still the statesman. These are just some thoughts I kicked around last night. Would this be a show that would be interesting to watch? I think so. Plenty of drama, could have a decent amount of action, and that has the morality play that honors Picard and Star Trek. After this, sure, go for that Mass Effect storyline. Thank you for your time, and I hope you enjoyed it. Jeffrey Moy. It's Jeffrey Moy. Jeffrey, I completely agree with you. I thought Star Trek Picard was terrible. I thought it was terrible because it didn't really tell a story about Picard. I mean, sure, Picard gets drawn in, but it wasn't about him. You know, it was just him, I'm going to go rescue a damsel in distress. But what did he want? You know, what was he looking for? He had no agency in the story. The story wasn't actually about him until, like, the very end when they threw this whole thing. I mean, you're following nothing that happened in Star Trek Picard. The Borg don't matter. The crime boss doesn't matter. None of it matters. None of it had anything to do with the Synth Revolt. I mean, not really. And I think you're right. It would have been really interesting. I mean, I think about Clint Eastwood turning 90 tomorrow. And couldn't they have a storyline? I didn't believe where Picard went. That was, again, that just shows how bad the writing was. Let's just make up and force this situation on Picard, a generic, I'm old, I'm disaffected, I resigned. I mean, it was a paint by numbers situation. It made no sense in the life of Jean-Luc Picard. It was just generic old man, unhappy, his life was ruined kind of a thing. And that wasn't Jean-Luc Picard. I agree with you. The biggest, most egregious crime that Picard committed is that it really wasn't about Jean-Luc Picard as we knew him. Look, you go back and you watch any montage of Picard, you go back and watch any Next Generation episode, it's like, wait a minute, that guy, other than being played by Patrick Stewart, is not the guy that was in, the guy in Next Generation is not the guy who was in Picard. And I understand, you can say, well, people get old, they get disillusioned, but you forget, wasn't Picard captain of the Stargazer for like 22 years? And then he was the captain of the Enterprise for how many? I mean, he's a lifer, man. He's out there amongst the stars. He's not going to go sit on a vineyard and write books. If Picard was going to be writing books, it would be on an archaeological dig somewhere, and he'd write at night. I mean, I think that was, you're absolutely right. 100% right, as a matter of fact. But, yeah, I agree with you. This letter comes from Mike Zimmerman. Hey, Rob. I was just watching you read the article on the Cinerama in Seattle. I live in Tacoma, Washington. That's where I have relatives that live there, too. And throughout the years, I've gone to Seattle to window shop and go see movies. My two favorite places to go see movies are the Cinerama and the IMAX next door to the Space Needle at the Pacific Science Center. It saddens me to see the closure of the Cinerama. I love movies. I'm a 47-year-old white guy who loves physical media like you do. My first movie I saw at the Cinerama was The Phantom Menace. I fell in love with the Cinerama after this experience. I continue to watch following prequels there too, and many other movies. The last movie I saw there was The Force Awakens. I love the IMAX theater too, where I saw The Dark Knight. After seeing it there, I was speechless. It was amazing. There are a few theaters here in Tacoma I go to, but nothing compares to the theaters in Seattle. I usually go to my local AMC here at Lakewood Town Center. I'm currently on SSI, undergoing chemo treatments in Tacoma. I watch a show in John Campia's almost on a daily basis. It helps me pass the time, even though I have hundreds of Blu-rays to watch. Thank you for reading my letter, Mike. Well, Mike, first of all, all the best to you, and I hope all that works out. But yeah, I mean, I don't understand. I get it. Real estate. Wow, let's build a building there. Let's tear down that single-use building and turn it into a mixed-use, another condo that costs $5,000 a month to live in, or an apartment, or whatever. And I understand housing's at a premium. I do. But, like I said, cities are also about culture. And having the Cinerama, which is a crown jewel as far as movie theaters go, it's worth preserving. Downtown Seattle, 2 blocks away from Amazon's world headquarters, should absolutely have the Cinerama there. The presentation of films is immaculate. It's second to none. It's first rate all the way. Seattle, when I was growing up, was one of the greatest movie towns ever. Like I told you the other day, per capita, we had like more theaters than any other city in the country. It was fantastic. I was spoiled. Maybe that's why I'm such a movie fanatic, because we had such a great movie-going town. And we need the Cinerama. We need to keep it there. And it's, I understand Paul Allen, there's a lot of money, his next of kin. It's like, I don't want to be saddled with a movie theater. So find somebody like Amazon, and Amazon will pay the money to keep it going the way it should be. Hopefully somebody will spearhead some kind of a campaign to keep that going. I mean, I really would hope so. Aaron Johnson writes in, Dear Rob, I have to quite agree with you about the Cinerama. This theater needs to be protected. Amazon needs to buy the Cinerama. The Cinerama deserves to be preserved, and I'm sure they could possibly include it with the Amazon-owned AMC theaters. They need to preserve the Cinerama. Film fans will thank Jeff Bezos for not only saving the Cinerama, but also to get AMC out of their debt. And to be honest, I think it could work out good for them, and they will be doing a public service for both the Cinerama and for AMC theaters by doing both. What do you think, Rob? Should Amazon help both of these businesses? I know that you'd like Amazon to save the Cinerama, but I generally think AMC does need their debts cleared as well. Maybe both can happen. Sincerely, Aaron Johnson. Well, from your mouth to God's ears, Aaron, because I want to see the Cinerama. I don't want to go back home and visit my mom and know that the Cinerama is not there anymore. That would really bum me out. I would not like that. I would not like that in the least. Let's see. Let me go back and see where I'm at. People are firing in chats here. And let me get to them. And of course, the first chat is from Willow Yang. Not only does she always support the channel, but I love her questions. So Willow says, if something like the Olympics is being held in the Federation, should there be different divisions for different races or species? Or are they just going to be certain games and sports that's completely dominated by one species? Gosh, that's a really good question. I mean, I think, look, you've got to have some kind of there's got to be some way to level the playing field. I think all different kinds of any humanoid race in the galaxy. I don't see there ever being a Galactic Olympics, because everybody would have different abilities. Yeah, you'd have different abilities. I don't think there's any way you could ever have Olympics with an interspecies Olympics, because there would always be advantages and disadvantages. And then, if you put all the humanoids that were reasonably the same, then other humanoids would be like, well, wait a minute, how come we can't play? So that's a really good question. I don't think they would be able to do that. I think certain species would have their own sporting events that would be popular throughout the Federation. And maybe some people would try and compete. It would be kind of funny, I think, but I don't know if that could. I mean, it would really depend. It would all be about science, I would imagine. It's a really good question, though. That's really interesting. I mean, no one's ever really, maybe somebody did. I'm not aware of anybody dealing with, I mean, yeah, you've got things like Parisi squares. We've seen games, well, like in the episode The Game, a video game type thing. But it'd be interesting to see I wonder, no one's ever tackled that, a Galactic Olympics. It'd be interesting. I would imagine it wouldn't work, but you never know. Michael Elliott sent in a super chat and said, I've been obsessed with space launches ever since I was a kid and the Apollo program. Walter Cronkite, I miss you. Yeah, me too. And was it like Peter Jennings or who's the... I loved the space launches. I've had since I was a little kid, because we're really going to space. I mean, I love science fiction. I love outer space, and we're going to space. And what was interesting is anybody who watched today's launch, or go back and watch it on YouTube or whatever, how cool are the spacesuits? I mean, it looks like a movie. They're in the future, man. They got touch screens. It's amazing. It's just amazing. I'm so excited. So excited. Yeah, it was like no more bulky spacesuits. It's crazy. Amazing. Mike at Journey's End sends in a tip and says, my girlfriend and I are debating about a good space-themed sci-fi film to watch to celebrate the launch. Any recommendations? She's pushing to just watch Aliens, but I want something more optimistic than humanity is doomed by an evil creature film. Well, there's a lot of, it's kind of interesting, but I would watch, say, Sunshine, Danny Boyle's Sunshine. I really like. I mean, the problem with space movies is so many of them are not optimistic. I mean, obviously, the granddaddy of all is 2001: A Space Odyssey. And if your girlfriend hasn't seen that, I know it's the problem with 2001, and I will say this right away. I love 2001. I think it's the best science fiction movie ever made. But it's, shall we say, deliberately paced, and it's mannered. And it's hard now to go back and have somebody watch that. But, another movie that you might find interesting, if you can find it, is Steven Soderbergh's. I mean, I love Solaris. The original Russian Solaris is very interesting, but again, it's because it's in Russian, it's kind of a slog in a way. I don't think so, but for people that aren't necessarily, you might not want to watch another deliberately paced Russian science fiction film. But there is also Steven Soderbergh's remake, or his. It wasn't a remake because you're adapting a book, but it was good. I liked, and Steven Soderbergh's Solaris and Sunshine, Danny Boyle's Sunshine, make for a very, very good double bill. And I think they celebrate space travel quite well. And, if you haven't watched 2001, 2010, I think 2010, while it doesn't reach the heights of what Kubrick was going for, it's a great space adventure. And even if you haven't seen 2001, I think you get the gist. I think 2010 is a really enjoyable film. And Close Encounters, Steven Spielberg's Close Encounters, another movie that, while it's not necessarily about us going to space until the end, spoiler alert, I think that's a movie that does celebrate space travel and all of that. And or maybe, not maybe, well, Contact with Jodie Foster. That's, if you're watching with your girlfriend, that's the stuff. Go for Contact, watch Contact, because, well, one, the protagonist is female, it's Jodie Foster, but you'll end up having a really interesting debate afterwards. Lot to discuss in that movie, so it's really cool. Sub McShave asks, thoughts on Ryan Gosling in the new Wolfman movie? I know, he's circling that project. Ryan Gosling as a new Wolfman, bring that on, son. Cannot wait. Woohoo! Yeah. I am in on that. So count me in on that one. Alexander Wilson is here. Hello, Alexander. Since Elizabeth isn't here, please tell us, who does your heart desire? Who is the lady that you love that you couldn't have? Who was the one that got away? Does it rhyme with McCola? McCole? No, it doesn't. No, look. She's as people move through their lives, they have different loves, and Elizabeth thinks that I'm obsessed with girls from my distant past. It's not that I am obsessed with them necessarily. But it's just, at different parts of your life, there's less to worry about. So, and it wasn't like the relationships were necessarily perfect or anything, but there was a few relationships that I have regrets about. But I think everybody does. And, as you get older, those things happen. So, yeah. But I choose to keep that to myself. And also, it's not fair to Elizabeth. I think that when you have a relationship with somebody, you should be focusing on that relationship, which is, again, something I've also, in the past, have not been good at. And I will say this. I mean, the people that and there are not that many, that I have been really, say obsessed by or whatever, it didn't work out for whatever reason. And I would assume the blame for all of that. So, yeah. Benjamin23 sends in a super chat and says, do you side with, I love this. Do you side with TNG fans that think Edward Jellico is a good captain, needed at the time, or do you think he's an a-hole? Benjamin, I am a dyed-in-the-wool fan of Edward Jellico. Chain of Command is my favorite Next Generation two-parter, and for those of you who don't remember, Chain of Command, there are 4 lights. That was Chain of Command Part 2. Chain of Command Part 1 has Edward Jellico, played by the great Ronnie Cox, who is Dick Jones in RoboCop, taking over. And I love him. And he has conflict with Riker. Look, Riker was wrong. Edward Jellico is on a wartime captain, on a wartime footing. He makes the ship the way he wants it. And there's even a part in the episode where Riker's like, there's no joy in what you do, and this. I remember watching that going, what? Of course there's no joy. He's not here to, he's here, he's a disciplinarian. He's trying to avert a war, and you're sitting there, I'm not having fun when the duty rosters change, and we have to work so hard. I used to hate that. I hated that. I'm like, Edward Jellico's a baller, and you should support him. He was a great captain. I love Edward Jellico, and it's too bad. If I'd made a Star Trek spin-off series, I would have made a spin-off series about Jellico. If they didn't create a new character, I would love to have seen Jellico come back on Deep Space Nine, maybe become a semi-regular. What was he doing during the Dominion War? I don't know, but I would have liked to have known. I love Edward Jellico. Those Next Generation fans that don't think Jellico's a good captain, out the airlock with them. I am an Edward Jellico sycophant. Benjamin23 goes further to say, I think Lieutenant Reginald Barclay is an example of diversity in Trek not often mentioned. Mental illness, primarily social anxiety, and a transporter-phobe. Transporter-phobia. Yeah, I think it absolutely. And the great lesson there is, look, do I think that I have a problem with this idea that in order to show diversity in Starfleet, we would allow people that have severe disabilities, we let them on starships. I just don't think that would happen. It'd be too much of a liability out on the final frontier, unless they could manage. But I do appreciate where they went with Barclay, because he could be good at his job. But I just don't think a guy with those kinds of anxieties and phobias would get that far in Starfleet. Certainly not on the Federation flagship in TNG. But I appreciate what they did. And this isn't because I'm a hard ass. As the Viceroy of Verisimilitude, I'm like, I'm sorry, but we're not in the business of diversity here for diversity's sake. We're on the front lines. We're on the cutting edge of space exploration. Unless you're the best of the best, you can't be here. And that's why I think it's weird that in Star Trek, and especially on Discovery, I just don't believe half the crew would be there. It's so weird to me. I'm like, why do you have to write these characters? I understand you want diversity and inclusion. That's great. But you've got to show me characters that are at the top 0.1% or 0.00001 percentile, the best of the best. That's one of the things that always appealed to me about classic Star Trek, is you're watching the best of the best. You can't be out on the final frontier and be anything less. Otherwise, you're not going to survive. So yeah, that's what I think. Mukbang is here. Mukbang says, great letters recently. Keep up the great work. Your live chat still rocks. Well put together community. Well, Mukbang, I really appreciate that. I mean, I think that we do have a great community. And, I've noticed, especially over the last couple weeks, there's a lot of new people here. There's a lot of people who have discovered me through various places. And I always get these letters about people are surprised, which delights me to no end. I mean, I think it's great that people are really responding and becoming a vibrant part of this community, because that's what it's all about. And my God, the letters people write me, they're amazing. And I can't thank everybody enough. Julius Goodwin is here again. Oh, you were so generous, sir. Thank you so much. Julius says, do you have a favorite ship design from any of the Star Trek series and its accompanying races? Mine is the USS Defiant of the Federation. It was built originally to fight the Borg, and it just looked sleek and deadly. Well, Julius, I have to tell you, my favorite thing in all of science fiction, fantasy, and horror as far as spaceships go, and I'm a spaceship junkie, as you know. I love spaceships. I have model spaceships. There's model spaceships all around here, and I can't get enough of them. But as far as Star Trek goes, always the Enterprise. The original Enterprise from the original series, but my favorite Enterprise is the Enterprise from the motion picture. The refit, the Enterprise refit, the 1701 refit, not the 1701A, because the reason I love the refit in the motion picture is also the paint scheme, the pearlescent paint. I have a beautiful model of it with that pearlescent paint. It's my favorite spaceship of all time, as it appears in Star Trek the motion picture. Now, I love the Defiant. I also love the Katinga Klingon, the D7 battlecruiser, but the Katinga refit from the motion picture. The motion picture, in my mind, the Star Trek, the motion picture, Star Trek 2 and Star Trek 3 have my favorite Star Trek designs. I love the USS Grissom in Star Trek 3, the science vessel. I loved it as a science vessel. Love the Reliant from Star Trek 2. Love the Bird of Prey from Star Trek 3, even though it was supposed to be a Romulan Bird of Prey, not a Klingon Bird of Prey. That's why it was called a Bird of Prey in the first place. But I love the designs. It's so funny to me that the Excelsior, though, became like the Enterprise B, and then Sulu became the commander of the Excelsior, because when the Excelsior was first shown in Star Trek 3, it was kind of like a guppy, a giant guppy. And it didn't work very well, so it was kind of this joke starship. But they had the model, so they continued to use it. And I don't mind that. I don't mind. The Excelsior looks more like an aircraft carrier, like a larger scale ship. And I love the Romulan Daredek class ships that were introduced in the last episode of the TNG in the Neutral Zone. The last episode of the first season of TNG, the Neutral Zone. By the way, one of the actors who played one of those two Romulans passed away the other day. One of our great character actors. but yeah, I like when Star Trek ship design is done well, like the Nekvar or the Vorcha. I love the Vorcha class ships as well. I think Star Trek ship design has gone completely off the rails. That's another thing. I think the producers of all this modern Star Trek, beginning with J.J. Abrams, I'm like, I hated the Enterprise. I've hated every ship design that we've seen. The Star Trek Discovery ship designs, the only ones I even like are remotely similar to. I don't even like the Enterprise redesign on Discovery. I'm like, there's the idea of these windows in front. I'm like, I'm not a fan. Star Trek ship design's gone completely off the rails. Unfortunately, I don't like any of it. But the Defiant's badass, no doubt. But I think back, look, I even when they started doing different things, like at first I didn't like the Voyager at all, but it's grown on me. I like the Voyager, but yeah, I mean the Defiant was probably the last Star Trek ship design that I think was outstanding. Was that one? Oh, you know what I have to say? I'll give it up. I'll admit, because it seemed like, even though it was the wrong size and all that, I did like the Kelvin. I know, Star Trek 09, there's something about Star Trek 09. I liked the Kelvin. I believed it was a canonical ship. I'd be like, okay, I could see this as a precursor to the Enterprise. Sure, I bought it. I did like some of the ship designs in Star Trek 09. I hated the Enterprise. Hated it. Ashley sends in a tip and says, "Hi, Rob. What are your thoughts on the 1986 time travel movie Biggles? I have never seen it. A fun little sci-fi movie that I hardly ever hear get mentioned. And what about that sweet peak 80s theme song by John Anderson? Thanks, Rob, for all that you do." John Anderson sings a song in Biggles? I mean, I like the song he did for Legend. And, of course, the Giorgio Moroder's Metropolis, Age of Freedom. I like John Anderson of Yes, Seen All Good People. Anyway, but I've never seen Biggles. I don't know that movie. Oh my God, I'll have to seek that out. Julius Goodwin sends in a super chat and says, "Have you ever considered a Kickstarter or crowdfunding for your projects? Supposedly it can be very effective for the kinds of things you want to do." Well, as many people who know that I was involved in Axanar, yeah, we raised a lot of money, over $1.5 million. The problem with Kickstarter is it's really hard. If you want to do a film project, it's really hard to make enough money unless what you're working with is an IP or you're making something that everybody likes, like redoing a video game, or like those 1/6 scale versions of video game consoles, or a card game, or things like that. Things that have a really big built-in audience. It's really hard to make as much money as you need. Now, I have a plan. If I was able to raise the money and I was able to convince Mark Gottwald, the executive producer of Free Enterprise, to either allow me access to the negative, or if I could buy the negative from him, I would probably absolutely crowdfund the 4K and the Blu-ray of a new version of Free Enterprise. I would do that, and to defray the costs. Kind of like, but again, I don't know. Maybe I'd only, sell a few thousand, which wouldn't be worthwhile. But yeah, I mean, also the comic book that I self-published, Living in Infamy, it's been out of print for almost 15 years, and I've thought about crowdfunding it and putting it back into print in book form. So I do. I mean, I think crowdfunding can work if you have the right project to make it work. Gerald's here, and Gerald sends in a tip and says, "Right now we have 2 American astronauts flying through space toward the International Space Station. How cool is that?" It is so cool. It is so cool. In honor of their achievement, what are some of your favorite science-based movies? Science, sci-fi without the fantasy element. Ooh, that's a good question. One of the first ones, I think the granddaddy of all of them, it's got to be the Andromeda Strain. Man, I saw the Andromeda Strain on TV, and the opening of that movie, like the first 10 minutes, freaked me out. Oh my God, did it freak me out. I love that. And other science-based movies like Phase 4. If you haven't seen Phase 4, I like Phase 4. Also Contact, that's another one. I mean, I don't know. I mean, those are kind of I mean, yeah, I mean, those are, I know what you mean. intelligent ants might seem fantastical, but it seemed realistic. But those are some that come to mind. I mean, the Andromeda Strain, I think, would be the granddaddy of all of them. And, even movies like Colossus, The Forbin Project, that was about computers, they seem pretty down to earth. Or Demon Seed. Demon Seed seemed, even though it's about a maniacal computer, Proteus, who wants to reproduce and live, it's got a realism to it that I very much appreciate. So, yeah, those are some. But it is very, very cool that we have astronauts in space. There are American astronauts above our heads right now orbiting the Earth in an American spacecraft that was built by a private company. It's amazing. Honest Asian Guy sends in a tip, one of two. Hey, Rob, I've never walked out on a movie before, but I almost dipped out on the Flintstones Viva Rock Vegas, but I stayed as it was my buddy's birthday. However, a couple of years after that, I was watching the 2003 Hellboy and 20-minuted in a bunch of people. And 20 minutes in, a bunch of people started leaving in droves, not knowing what awesomeness awaited them. With that said, Rob, have you ever walked out on a film, and which film was it, and why? Thanks for doing what you do, and enjoy the rest of your day. Honest Asian Guy, I walked out of one film in my entire life. And that was the pseudo-sequel to the Rocky Horror Picture Show, Shock Treatment. I don't know why. I just couldn't take it anymore. I can watch anything. But the way I remember it, it was forcing. You cannot force something to become a cult movie, and that's what I felt this movie was doing. I felt it was disingenuous, and I remember hating it. Now, that said, I haven't seen it. I've never seen the whole thing. I'm very curious though about going back and watching it. I've often thought I should go track that movie down and watch it again, and just to see. But that was the only movie I got up after like 25 minutes or something. I was seeing it at the Neptune Theater, that's how, in Seattle, which isn't a movie theater anymore, but I loved it. It was a landmark theater. I hated that movie. Hated it. But I'll stick it out. I will stick out. I'll stick out most movies. So, yeah. There you go. Stub McShave sends in a tip and said, I've enjoyed Bibiani and Siebold's Episode 0 podcast where they talk about movies that influenced Star Wars. So far, they've gone through Flash Gordon serials, The Hidden Fortress, The Dam Busters, 2187, The Wizard of Oz, King Kong, Dersu Uzala, and Silent Running. Oh, that's cool. Yeah, I mean, those are all good things. I think that's... I haven't listened to that. Whitney should not be doing podcasts. He should only be studying because he's on my... Schmodown team. So when he's not studying, I'm very upset. No, I'm kidding. I think Bibiani and Siebold doing that would be great. I'm all in on that. Austin Hernandez is here. Hola, mi amigo Roberto, ¿cómo está? It's been a while, my friend. By the way, I'm turning 40 on Thursday. Any advice on how to deal with this milestone? Drink heavily. No. Here's the thing. I think when you have a milestone birthday, you have to ask yourself, okay, I've made it this far. Things are pretty good. What is it you want to accomplish? What do you want to do now? You should always look forward. Don't look back and lament your past or all that. It's waste of time. What's in the past is prologue, man. Just, okay, what are you going to do for the next decade? How are you going to plan that out? You don't necessarily have to have a total plan, but you should have, goals. Set yourself some milestones. Here's where I want to be. Where do you want to be when you're 50? And try to achieve those goals if you can. That's what you got to do. That's what you got to do. Happy birthday, by the way. Rob Korzak sent in a super chat and said, Rob, could Thundar the Barbarian see a revival? I just wanted to mention Thundar and Ookla the Mock. I liked Thundar the Barbarian. I mean, I remember when it was on. I watched Thundar. It was like the last Saturday morning cartoon I was really into. Yeah, why not? Why not do... I'm surprised. I mean, with He-Man and She-Ra and all that, I wouldn't be surprised if a Thundar the Barbarian remake is coming back. I like the world of Thundar. I love the fact that it had a shattered moon in the sky. I thought that was great. Jeffrey Mao sends in a tip and says, I got Walter Koenig's book, Beaming Up and Getting Off, Life Before and Beyond Star Trek. And I'll send a review in when I'm done with it. Oh, my God, I can't wait. As you all know, that the Walter Koenig was on the Inglorious Treksperts podcast. I was on that episode, and it was terrific. Awesome. Alexander Wilson is back and sends in a tip and says, I saw Mark Cuban on CNBC say he sold Landmark Theaters because there's not that much of a return on it. He said he would probably never go back into the cinema business. Opinions on Cuban and what he said. Please note, when Cuban talks, I listen. I'm a big fan. I like Mark Cuban as well. Look, there is not a lot of money in movie exhibition, not compared to all the other things that Mark Cuban is involved in. I like the guy. But, movie exhibition is a singular business. And if you want to get into movie exhibition, you have to really want to be in movie exhibition. And the funny thing about Landmark Theaters is Landmark Theaters, we have one in Pasadena. I love Landmark Theaters, but they just don't do brisk business. I've seen some of the most obscure movies at our Landmark Theater here in Pasadena. And I'm like, I can't imagine that these movies make money here. I mean, it's great that they got a theatrical release, but he's absolutely right. You can't just be an owner of a movie theater and not nurture it, because it's just not that, it just doesn't work. It's not that, it is not that lucrative, but I still like him. Alexander Wilson continues on and says, Elizabeth thinks you are smitten with past ladies. My lady says the same thing about me. I'm like you. I think more about my past ladies than I'm like you. Think more about my past ladies than I do. It baffles me. Also, HBO Max is cropping movies, and I'm like, what the heck? They are? Great. Cropping, you mean the aspect ratios? Man, I hate that. That's one of the things I love about Netflix is anybody, if you start cropping movies, it just drives me insane. That's another reason I won't part with my physical media. I want the original aspect ratio. There's no call for that, but you know what? I bet they don't even know. Like, they get what the studios send them. It's so lame. It's like what happened with Back to the Future. Just like I said on the John Campea show, I said I bet Universal doesn't even know, and it turns out they sent them some specific thing that was probably, for whatever reason, we couldn't have a nudie magazine. It probably was going to a predominantly Islamic country, so you couldn't. That's verboten, which I understand why they would do that for that country, but. And then what happens is that copy of the film gets in the catalog because nobody knows the difference, and it gets sent out again. That's what's really, it's just terrible. I don't like it. But yeah, I mean, what's so funny about Elizabeth and just, I think, women in general. I mean, men, like women, at least in my life, I've noticed that when women are done with you, they're done with you. The relationship's over, and if they cut it off, they're done. They're done. And I understand that. And it's not like you can convince somebody most of the time. You can't convince them. But we tend to, I tend to mythologize my own life. And I look back at my own life and I think, oh, if only this, could have worked, or this could have gone a different way or something. But we tend to look at those things as more like we were the protagonists of our own story. And I look at those things to get, like all of these girls that Elizabeth, I still talk to. I'm still friends with them. I'm still friends with most of the women that I dated because I genuinely liked them and liked them as people. The whole point of liking them in the first place. But it's like most of them are married now or have been married, or it's a weird. Like, I don't spend my days thinking about, oh, I should be with this person from 20 or 30 years ago. That's sort of silly. I mean, there's a reason I'm not with that person from 20 or 30 years ago. So, and also, a lot of it, I think, has to do with time. Like, when you think back to a specific time, like, there's specific times in my life where these women represent that, and they encompass the entire time. Like, I can't think back to my junior and senior years in high school without thinking about one specific person who's still my friend and who's near and dear to me. But I can't think about high school without thinking about this person. It just doesn't work because it is my memories of my last 2 years of high school, and actually even before that, are full of this person that I was, who's an amazing person. And so it's kind of a strange thing and I think about that. I think about my life as a story, and what does this mean, and what was I doing, and all that. So, but I don't think women are that way at all. Fortunato sends in a tip and says, "Hi Rob, I think you pick up the most essential part about old Trek, optimism. You clearly displayed that optimism in the letter from the guy today. Keep on trekking. Oh, well, thank you, Fortunato. It's funny when I see the name Fortunato, I just think of the character in the Wild Cards franchise. And the first story, where is it, in Wild Cards 1? Well, it is right there. Oh, here it is. If you guys have not, this is the first paperback release of George R.R. Martin and Melinda Snodgrass edited this series of books. See, again, this book is, when did this book come out? Let me look. Let me see. This book came out, this paperback book came out in 1986. As you can see, I keep my paperback books pretty immaculate. 86. This paperback book is 34 years old. That's so crazy. It's so crazy to think that this is 30. Although, what's with this little bent page in there? The character Fortunato is in a story called, I believe it's called The Long Dark Night of Fortunato. I think. Oh, it doesn't have the names of the stories in the. I just want to know. Yep. The Long Dark Night of Fortunato. Fortunato is a character, which I really liked, and it's by Louis Shiner. The Long Dark Night of Fortunato. If you haven't read the Wild Card series, it's still being published. It's a they're called mosaic novels. They're where different authors come in and write short stories that are interconnected. It's so awesome. It's all about superheroes. And I talked to Melinda Snodgrass about this series of books. But yes, that's what I think when I see your name, and it always makes me... It puts me in a positive mood, Fortunato. Stubble McShave says, so Clint Eastwood turns 90 tomorrow. Will you and Elizabeth do a Clint movie on whining? Which movie would you pick? I guess it won't be Where Eagles Dare. I love Where Eagles Dare, though. You know what? I might have to bust out either Good, the Bad, and the Ugly or Unforgiven. Gotta watch something for Clint's 90th birthday. And, yeah. Oh, look who's here. Josh Rosowskis is here, and he sends in a tip. Thanks, Rob. And absolutely, Josh, it was good to see you back. I loved seeing your video today. I watched your video. I thought it was good. And good for you, man. Thanks, Rob. And yes, Pedro, don't hold back. Try your best. Just get out there and do it. You know, Josh, I mean, you're one of the people. It's funny because it's not like you don't really tell people these kinds of things. But, Josh, I've always, since I've come to know you through this channel, I have a great deal of admiration for you that despite your disability, you're out there working on shows and doing your own YouTube thing. And I think it's great. You haven't given up, and I think it's amazing. And I like watching your shows. I even learned something about wrestling. Dimsum05 sends in a tip and says, with the way 2020 is going, I wouldn't be surprised if Bankin and Hurley come back to Earth to a Planet of the Apes scenario. Yeah, that would be terrible. Can you imagine? Yeah, we're not doing so well. We need to do better. I have been pretty disgusted. Look, this kind of rage, even I, watching that video of a man literally having the life choked out of him. For what reason? Apparently he tried to cash a bad check, forge a check or something. Okay, admittedly, that was a crime. Is that a crime that is worth losing your life for? The guy was cuffed. The dude was handcuffed. And it's just like, come on, man. He was cuffed. His hands were behind his back. He wasn't going anywhere. You had 4 cops. You controlled the situation. Your job is to render aid when you can, and they didn't. It's not good. I saw on Twitter, and I talked about it. It was on TikTok. It was a video on TikTok. There was a black cop. I mean, imagine you're a black cop today. How does that feel? Even though you're out there doing the same job, busting your ass every single day. But he was talking about what was wrong and what disturbed him about the situation, and basically very eloquent. He said, look, 4 guys, 4 cops. I mean, the thing that really bothers me is not all cops are bad. People get into these professions and they have the best of intentions, and when something like this goes wrong, if there's good police out there, and all of them get besmirched by this, and they're all putting their lives out on the line. As I've said, my experiences with the police, and I flat out, I was arrested once, man. I was in L.A. County, and my entire experience, that was a very interesting experience for a traffic violation that started. I got a ticket, by the way. Here's how it started. I got a ticket for I was literally putting my cell phone in the tray in the front of the holder on a car, in the front of a car, and I got a ticket for that, and from the CHP, and I didn't realize that ticket is the ticket you get. You don't have something else sent to you, like in LA, you get things sent to you. Well, that was it, and I didn't realize I had to show up to court in Santa Clarita, so I didn't show up to court, and the judge was pissed, and there was a $50,000 bench warrant put out for my arrest. Didn't know any of this. I was coming back from Awake. Joe Bologna, who starred in like My Favorite Year and Blame It on Rio. He's one of the co-writers and stars of Tango Shalom. He passed away, and I was coming back from his wake with Elizabeth. Got pulled over because I was driving her car, and her taillight was out. Cops find out that I have a $50,000 bench warrant, and I got thrown in Hollywood, which I didn't even know I had. Thrown in Hollywood jail on a Saturday night on a traffic violation, and they couldn't let me go on Sunday because I was never fingerprinted. I wasn't in the system, and for whatever reason, they didn't believe. I mean, it's so weird. And then I got taken to county, and I had to go see a judge on Monday. It was a nightmare, but I wound up in L.A. County Jail after spending 2 nights in Hollywood. Going to jail was not fun. It was not a good thing. Yeah. Yeah. Crazy. Claudius is here. Claudius says, "Oh, hi, Rob. Just saying hello." Alexander Wilson is here, and still here. I was listening to a movie podcast who was reviewing The Last Dance, and he said Michael Jordan reminded him of J.K. Simmons' character from Whiplash. The way they used abuse to motivate people were similar. Interesting how much sports and movies interact. First of all, Alexander, what a great analogy. I love Whiplash. If you guys haven't seen Whiplash, by the way, you know who produced Whiplash? Jason Blum. And it didn't make any money, and he's even said publicly he wouldn't make Whiplash again. I love Whiplash. If you guys haven't seen Whiplash, it's basically about a music teacher and a drummer played by Miles Teller. And J.K. Simmons plays the music teacher, and he's this maniacal, he demands excellence, and he pushes a student to the limit. And it's awesome. It's so good. And J.K. Simmons, he won an Oscar for that performance. It was awesome. But, yeah, I mean, The Last Dance, by the way, I'm catching up with that. It is amazing. Even if you don't like basketball, you've got it. It's all about Michael Jordan's the career and the Bulls. Oh, it's so good. But, yeah, you gotta catch up with that if you haven't seen it. But, sports and movies, I'll tell you something. I am not a huge sports fan, and I've said on this show a lot that I love sports movies, because I think that sports movies are kind of like cop movies, in that, like, with cop movies you can mythologize them. Like, cops can be, or lawyers too, they can be like the modern day knights that are trying to combat evil, or they can be evil or combat evil or whatever. But sports movies are kind of like that too. Sports movies have this sort of built-in underdog factor, and you can tell a story about characters overcoming adversity, and you have graphic depictions of achievement, which are games. So if you win a game or you get a home run or something, they just lend themselves well. The stories lend, like a phenom comes along, and you have somebody who has a great rookie year, and I love stories like that. I mean, some of my favorite movies, I love Any Given Sunday. I can watch Any Given Sunday forever. I think that movie, it's all about the business of football. I remember I didn't see it in the theater, but there's a movie with Nick Nolte and Mac Davis called North Dallas 40. That was like a football movie that I loved, and Slapshot and Bad News Bears. And I love sports movies. And I think it's got that built-in element to them, which is pretty neat. Honest Asian guy sends in a tip and says, "Holy crap, Rob! Bryan Singer's X-Men turns 20 this year. You and the Ace have definitely got to whine about this." Really? Let's make another phone call. Let's see if somebody will pick up this time. I don't know if they will because I had a long conversation. Hang on. Where is it I'm going here? What am I trying to do? Okay, I'm going to see if he'll pick up. Maybe he won't. We'll see if he does. He might not. Because he's in his $1 million home theater watching movies. We'll see. He only texts. Just like maybe he'll text me back. I'll text him on the phone.
I'm sorry, the person...
No. I'm going to text him. I'll see what he has to say about this. Do you have anything to say? Do you have any comment? Any comment about X-Men? About X-Men turning 20 this year. Let's see if he asks. I'm live on my. I'm live. Talking about it. On YouTube. Call me back and answer. Let's see what he has to say. Okay. Maybe he'll call me back. Maybe he won't. Then you'll get your answer about X-Men turning 20. Alexander Wilson goes on to say, George R.R. Martin. That reminds me that I don't think he will ever finish A Song of Ice and Fire. The last two books were all over the place with no end in sight. I think he wrote himself into a corner with so many meaningless characters and side plots. I don't know. I think he's going to have to. He needs to. He really needs to. But in the end, don't we want him to? I think we want him to. I would like to see that. But yeah. BL Alley. But you know what? I mean, it has ended. And he can be like, well, they already did the show. But I think he's going to want to end it. It's his legacy. I think he'll end it. He must. BL Alley is here. Hello. Writer BL Alley is here. Optimistic space movies that show how it's done. The Right Stuff, which is one of my first movies, one of my top 10 favorite movies of all time. First Man, another good movie. Apollo 13. Ooh, The Martian too. All those movies are great. I love them all. The Right Stuff and The Martian. I think The Martian. What I love about The Martian is it's not a docudrama. It is one of my. I think it's one of the best science fiction movies ever made. I love The Martian so much. Wow. Well, yeah, I've got my producers in New York of Tango Shalom going, stay safe, guys. There's all kinds of craziness happening here in LA. Those are great movies. Those are great movies. John Ortiz sends in a super chat. Thank you, John. I appreciate that. Alexander Wilson continues. The lady in the park with the dog who called the cops on the black man in Central Park, who used to be an editor at Marvel, was scary. The way she turned into Meryl Streep so quick and was able to make lies believable was frightening. Dude, I said this. I was on Twitter talking about this, and I have to tell you, I found that to be incredibly disturbing on a number of levels. First of all, for those of you who don't know, I think his name's Cooper. So there was a black dude, Central Park. He's an avid bird watcher, and he was just chilling, in the park, watching his birds, not minding his own business. And the place in Central Park that he was, everybody knows the story, but I'll just recount it. You can't have your dogs off leash. They have to be leashed. There's other places you can have them off leash, but in this particular part, and he called her on it. He's like, lady, you can't have your dog off leash in this part of the park. And she like gets all mad at him. You don't know, you can't tell me what to do. And so she gets all angry. So he picks up his phone. It's all over the news if you haven't seen this. And he starts taping. He starts digitally capturing her with his phone. And she starts going off on him. And he's just like, he's not antagonizing her. He's not saying anything. And she's like, I'm going to call the police. She literally calls the police and starts saying that an African-American man is threatening me. And she does. And then she puts on this act, this demure act. What I thought was so terrifying was, first of all, she's a woman, first of all. She's treading on these stereotypes that women are demure and they need to be rescued and all that. And then she's using the term African American man as a sort of a dog whistle that I'm being threatened by an African American man, i.e. scary black man that's going to what? Like what are the police supposed to infer from this? So she's using stereotype number 2. So I'm a damsel in distress, and I'm being threatened by an African American man, and she turns into this like you say, she's putting on this act, like in her voice. And this is learned behavior, and it was so terrifying to me because if the police had come, how's this dude supposed to like tell him like, hey, yo, I wasn't doing anything. I was sitting here bird watching. First of all, it doesn't matter what color you are. How are you going to convince the cops when a woman has called the cops on you that you're sitting there bird watching? Are they going to believe that? So basically what this woman was doing was, this poor guy, if those cops showed up, she knows what could happen. So she basically put this man's, I know it might seem histrionic, but this goes to the root cause of everything that's a problem in this country right now. It's about systemic racism that exists that nobody is, I saw somebody really interesting there was a lot of these black leaders on CNN talking about what to do, like the former mayor of New Orleans. And there was a guy that I didn't know who, I forget his name. It's like LZ something. Incredibly eloquent speaker who laid out the problem. He's like, we spend, I believe he's a black community leader of some kind. I don't know. I didn't recognize him. I don't know if I've seen him speak before. I just remember his name's LZ something. I think with the last name that starts with a G. Great guy. So he was talking. He's like, look, what people don't understand is, for black Americans, we basically we just stay quiet. Are we ever getting justice? No. We have to put up with all of these things that happen to us all the time. What you want, what society wants, is for us to just be quiet. But there is no justice. There is no justice. There's never been justice. And when these things happen, they're literally when you have an actual digitally captured image of a black man being straight up murdered by a cop. Straight up murdered. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. By the way, there's a meme going around, or there's like the coroner's report saying, well, he didn't die from asphyxiation. He died because of these underlying conditions. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Brian Singer did text me back. Hang on, I was going on a rant. Brian says, hey, I'm in my car with my dad, which is our ritual. I don't know how long it will last, but if not this time, I'm happy to talk about it, and I'll come on the show anytime you want. Well, there you go. All right, back cool. So, yes, ladies and gentlemen, that was Brian Singer. He will talk about, you know what? Hell, man, I'll just do a 20th anniversary of X-Men show and have Brian come on. Why not? I'll just interview him like I've interviewed everybody else. I think that'd be cool. What a good idea. So thanks for that. But what I was going to say is, and he was basically saying the underlying problems have not gone away. Andrew Cuomo The governor of New York said, as a prosecutor, he said today, he's like flat out, there is no justice. There is no justice for black Americans in our criminal justice system, because he's a former prosecutor. He flat out said it. The governor of New York said yesterday on TV, there is no justice in the criminal justice system for African Americans. None. There's all kinds of inequality. Flat out. And until these situations are addressed, which they never are, everybody, when there's an event that happens, oh, okay, well, now we'll pay lip service to it, because finally when the community is so angry, this kind of thing boils over. And in addition to that, you have all these people that aren't part of these communities taking advantage of it to their own ends, which is gross. But, I mean, you know, and it's interesting because these things happen in the same week. A black man murdered by a cop on video in front of everybody, so they can see it. And then at the same time, a woman in a park in New York, is using the stereotype of an African-American male, alone, up to no good, threatening, oh, a poor woman. I mean, it was shocking. It was so angry. It was so maddening. And I'm like, man, it's this kind of thing that, of course, there is no justice, and there's never going to be peace until this kind of systemic racism and the fact that you know, everyone say, well, African Americans, they're predominantly they're in terms of the amount of members per capita of the community in the United States, an inordinate amount of them commit crime. Well, yes, because there is no equality in this country. There's economic inequality. There's too much poverty. And there's not enough opportunity for people to succeed. Schools, I mean, you still can't get clean water in Flint, Michigan. I mean, it's like, why is this happening? Why is it happening? Because for 400 years, black Americans have had a raw deal, even right now. And that's why our cities are burning. And why doesn't anybody sit and say, why don't we fix the underlying problems so this kind of inequality doesn't happen? This kind of systemic racism can go away. I mean, it's not really my area of expertise, but watching that video of that woman made me so angry. I can't even tell you. Not that the video of watching a black guy's life extinguished on the side of the road by a cop who didn't do anything, and neither did the other 3 cops that were there. The guy was handcuffed behind his handcuffs. His arms were behind his back. And he was cuffed. He represented absolutely no threat. In what way, shape, or form is it okay to put your knee on someone's neck? I was so angry. Between those two things, I was so mad about that. But that woman thing freaked me out because, and I'll tell you why. It's like, on one hand, you want to believe all women. And I've known so many women that were victimized throughout my entire life. But we had a graphic depiction of a woman who was lying through her teeth to the police, to try and bring the wrath of God down on a black man who was sitting, minding his own business, bird watching in Central Park. I mean, this woman comes in breaking the rules in the first place. This dude's just sitting on a bench. And he's like, hey, lady, could you maybe leash your dog? And look what happens. She could have had that guy killed. And if he wasn't killed, then he's going to get arrested. And how is he supposed to, like, she's some high-powered vice president at a finance company, a brokerage house. It's going to be her word against his. If he didn't have that video, if he hadn't shot that video, that was his only defense. He could have been railroaded by the system. You know, how many times has that happened to a black man in America? Where somebody just, he said, she said, or he said, and it's a bunch of bullshit, and nobody believes them. It's terrible. It's the worst. It's terrible. You know, I mean, maybe something good will come out of this. But I have to tell you, that guy LZ, look, it was this morning. It was on Wolf Blitzer's show. It was this morning. They had these black leaders on. I know people are like CNN. Look, whether you believe CNN's bias or MSNBC or the BBC, I watch all different news networks. I'm just saying that this morning, find the Wolf Blitzer clip. I'm sure it's up there. I think it was on from 9 o'clock to 10 o'clock Pacific time this morning. It might have been 8 to 9, maybe 8 to 9. I don't remember. I was drinking my coffee. I was watching this. And that guy, LZ, listen to what he had to say. Go find that clip and listen to what he had to say because, man, that was some truth there. Anyway, sorry about that. Yes, so I apologize. Anyway, Alexander, yes, I'm sorry. That just, it irked me to no end. And people wonder why. And everyone's like, oh, it's crisis actors. No, it's not. There's a lot of real angry people that have the right to be angry because in their lifetimes, every couple of months, a black person in America gets straight up murdered by the cops, by the authorities. Why does this happen? Why does it keep happening over and over and over and over and over and over and over? How many people have to die? How many people now have to die on camera? I mean, some dude's running down the street, he's jogging. Two dudes straight up just fucking murder him. And one guy's shooting it. Doesn't get out of his truck, doesn't try to help. Straight up execution. Anyway. Where were we? Julius Goodwin is back. Sends in a super chat and says, what's the best sports movie you've seen? For me, it's Glory Road, the story of Clem Haskins and the first all-black team to win the NCAA tournament. Glory Road is a great movie. You know what? On that same kind of line, I think that the documentary Hoop Dreams. It's a 90s documentary that follows these two guys, two kids, and they're. If you haven't seen Hoop Dreams, I know it's not a narrative feature, it's a documentary feature. Oh my God, it's amazing. I mean, it's so heartfelt and heartbreaking and so emotional. If you haven't seen that, check out Hoop Dreams. But in terms of movies, in terms of sports movies, there's so many. I mean, it's more of a. Like, I really like The Natural, but I have to tell you, one of my favorite sports movies that I've ever seen is the reason why I wanted to work with this director, Robin Armstrong, is a low-budget Miramax release from the early 90s called Pastime that stars William Russ as a minor league pitcher who is sort of past his prime and a young pitcher that's clearly on the up and up. It's a very quiet little movie, but it really embodies the spirit of what sports is. And again, I really I love Bull Durham as well. But yeah, Glory Road's a great movie. It is a great movie. But yeah, that's the first thing that came to mind was Hoop Dreams. Hoop Dreams is great. Great t-shirt, Rob. I love both Empire and SFX magazines. Pricey mags for us readers across the pond. Empire is currently at $70 to $84 a year. Oh my God. I got this shirt. It's so funny. I forgot I even had this shirt. And I found it. I found it in a box. I got this at Comic-Con, I want to say years ago. And I'd forgotten. I'd never worn it up until the last couple of weeks because I found it. I love this shirt. I love Empire. I haven't bought the last months I would buy Empire religiously off this one newsstand, but I haven't been able to get to the newsstand. It's been closed. So I haven't read it. Alexander Wilson sends in another tip and says, the NBA on NBC meshed all their promos with Danny Elfman, John Williams, and Michael Kamen scores. The 93 NBA Finals intro with Jordan versus Barkley and the NBA Finals intro with Jordan versus Barkley was set to the Jurassic Park theme. It was so epic. I remember that. NBC turned NBA into beautiful art. The NBA on Disney is bland. You know, I have to say, with NBC, with their, the dun 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 dun, that's a John Williams piece of music too. I mean, that's the kind of thing that should happen. Now people can't do that because we have to license the music. I mean, maybe they had to license the music, but I don't think anybody would have cared back then. I'm sure John Williams was like, I'm working for it. If you want to use my scores, you can. But you're right. I mean, that's always awesome when people do that. Anthony Gonzalez sends in a tip and says, I just researched DS9's past tense for my 7th time. A past tense is a 2-part episode of Deep Space Nine where they go back in time and Cisco becomes they have the Bell riots, these homeless riots in San Francisco, and he gets caught up in that. It turns out he might even be he is, but it's what a great episode. Deborah Van Valkenburg's in that episode as well. That's a great episode. How does something like that come about? One writer in Berman and one writer and Berman and Pillar, you meant to say Pillar, give the thumbs up or a whole writer's room, one day I hope you can interview a Deep Space Nine writer. Oh, I know Deep Space Nine writers. I could. I should have them on there. The way that TVs work, TV writers' rooms work, is you have staff writers. So you have the showrunner, and then you have the writing staff. And the writing staff, say you're at a writers' meeting, or you might have the entire writing staff sitting around a table pitching ideas, and then they'll come up with the ideas, and then the writers will get assigned the scripts. I don't know if Past Tense was written by, I do not recall if both episodes are written by the same writer. Sometimes they're not. Like Mike Sussman worked on In a Mirror Darkly, both episodes. But it depends, and for Enterprise. But it depends. That's really interesting. But yeah, I mean, then Berman wouldn't really interact directly with the writer's room, but he was above them. But he would actually ultimately have to okay that script. Austin Hernandez says, X-Men's 20 years old. Would crap. If you do have Brian on and you interview him, would we also be able to ask him some questions? I would probably try and do it live. I think that'd be more fun to do it live. But here's the problem. Obviously, Brian has had some stuff happen in his career, and he's been accused of things, which, by the way, I do not believe that they are true. I've worked with Brian, and it's not one of those things, well, how do you really know anybody? I know Bryan Singer. I do not believe that the accusations against Bryan Singer are true. Now, Brian will tell you, there's a lot of things that he's done that he's not proud of and aren't good, but there's certain accusations that have been brought against him, really ugly accusations, I don't believe are true. Why? Because I followed Bryan Singer around with a camera day and night for a year, and I've known him for 30 years, and Bryan Singer is not somebody who he doesn't hide what he doesn't hide. He's never hidden. And he's just not the kind of person. There are specific reasons I won't get into that I know he's innocent, but I wouldn't talk about this stuff. But yeah, so I think one of the things that would be problematic is that if I did a live show with Brian, it would be difficult. But I would if he agrees to come on and I can do an interview with him, then I would get questions from people in advance. And do that. I think that would be the best way to do it. Well, let's find out. Let's see if he'll do it. Can we do a Skype interview about X-Men at 20? At 20. And your career. See what he says. There you go. Because that would be cool. I think that'd be great. So that's how I do it, Austin. Flashback Throg says, did I hear something about a traffic ticket? Old girlfriends, a lot of cocaine in Miami Vice. Pictures, please. Or it did not happen. And we went back to space because Elon Musk. Talking about Don Johnson or Joe Bologna. I miss him too. Vittorio Malavacqua. Vittorio Malavacqua. That's very funny. I've got pictures. I've got all kinds of pictures. Yes, all kinds of pictures. Alexandra Wilson. That's very funny. Or Hassan is here. Hassan says, hi-ho, Godfather. I like that you tweeted that poster and people think you have a cult now. But it's hardly a successful cult, though, because you have like 3 female followers. What movies do you think are often dismissed as chick flicks? Well, I think like Water for Chocolate that we did on Whining About Movies last night is a chick flick. I think Love Actually might get dismissed as a chick flick. I don't know. I mean, look, I think just because movies have female subject matter, like, look, I love Norma Ray with Sally Field. I didn't think that was a chick flick. Or I think good movies are good movies. So I don't necessarily think that, But like Bridesmaids is a chick flick, but it's hilarious. I love Bridesmaids. I thought that was great. 9 to 5 with Jane Fonda, Dolly Parton, and Lily. Why am I drawing a blank on her name? Lily, Frankie and Grace, Lily Tomlin, right? Lily Tomlin is a great movie. It's not a chick flick. It's just a great movie. So yeah, Alexander Wilson is back and says, my dad was a former basketball coach and he coached some of the kids seen in Hoop Dreams. A lot of those kids fell through the cracks. He can't watch it. Also, he told me about some of the money that colleges would pay athletes to attend. It's crazy. Yeah. Man, I could understand your dad having coached some of those kids not being able to watch Hoop Dreams. I understand. It's rough. It's funny, Alexander. I should reach out to Quinn Snyder. A guy that I grew up with. I went to kindergarten through senior year in high school. Quinn Snyder, he's the head coach of the Utah Jazz. I should reach out to him and interview him. Not my normal bill of fare, but it would be really fun to interview him for this channel. Just to broaden. I think I'll do that. I'm going to do that. I'm going to reach out. I mean, they're not really doing anything now. Can they practice? I'm going to reach out to Quinn, and I'll see if he'll come on the show, because that'd be cool. I mean, obviously, I would talk to him more about how did he get to become head coach of the Jazz and his whole journey, all the way back to I played basketball with him in elementary school, so that would be fun to do that. David Crabtree sends in a tip and says, hey, Rob, happy launch day. All right. Happy launch day to you. So last night I decided to check out the first couple episodes of Space Force on Netflix and ended up binging all 10 episodes. Really enjoyed it. Steve Carell and John Malkovich are gold. Have you had a chance to check it out? You know what? I found out that Space Force dropped yesterday on the John Campea show. I haven't checked it out. I've heard the first couple of episodes are really inside baseball or inside spaceball. Really industry insider stuff, but then it becomes more understandable as you go on. It's great. You're the first person I've heard say that you watched the whole thing. So, David, obviously, I'm a big fan of you and your work, so it's great to know that you liked it. I'm excited. Julius Goodwin is back, Julius. Thank you so much. Another little-known fact for real life about the Miners team that won the championship in Glory Road. Practically all the members of that squad, especially the black ones, either graduated from college or only ended up a few classes short. That's really interesting. I didn't know that. That's good. Yeah, it's my experience too. Where I went to high school on Mercer Island, I mean, yes, it was a very privileged community, but the stereotype that the jocks weren't also smart. I mean, Quinn Snyder, who led our basketball team to the state championship my senior year, who's now coach of the Utah Jazz, was also a 4-point student. Well, and his father was the vice principal of our high school, Gary Snyder. But yeah, for the most part, my experience in high school, well, elementary school, junior high, and high school with all the jocks is that they were all the jocks who went, all the people I grew up with, at least the way I remember it, were all pretty nice. Like, I liked them all. There were no, I didn't remember them being dicks. But then again, my experience was probably different because I kind of liked everybody. So, anyway, let me jump in. I've got a few more letters, and then a really long letter. Omar94 is here. Hi, Rob. I have more recommendations to you, your moderators, and the viewers for movies I like and I think are underappreciated. If none of you have seen them, this one is a little different, as these are Studio Ghibli movies that nobody really talks about, as most people think of movies like Spirited Away, Princess Mononoke, My Neighbor Totoro, Grave of the Fireflies, Howl's Moving Castle, when Ghibli is brought up. But here we go. My first recommendation is a 2013 movie called The Tale of Princess Kaguya. I've not seen it. It's beautifully animated with narrative depth you don't often see in a lot of Hollywood animated movies. My second recommendation is a 2014 movie called When Marnie Was There. Wow. Like my previous recommendation, this movie also has narrative depth that you don't see in a lot of Hollywood animated movies. Those are my recommendations, Tale of Princess Kaguya and When Marnie Was There. Thanks, and live long and prosper. Well, thank you for writing in and all that you do every day. And you also go on to say, considering Phase 4 of the MCU will not be here for a while, this is also Omar, I wanted to ask you about the previous 3 phases. Like, If, like in Endgame, you can go back in time, what would you tell the Kevin Feige about problems that could have occurred throughout the movies so that he could have fixed them ahead of time? Like, if you didn't like an MCU movie because of the script or something like that, you would tell Feige ahead of time so he could have fixed it and the movie could have been better. This is the first part of a 2-part letter about the MCU. I will send the second part later, as that will be a very long letter discussing all the problems I have with the MCU in general. Uh-oh. Thanks, and live long and prosper. I gotta tell you, man, I think the MCU, for the most part, you've got 23 movies now that make up the Infinity Saga, from Iron Man 1 to Spider-Man Far From Home. 23 movies. And for the most part, what 23 movie series is as successful? First of all, how many 23 movie series are there? There's the James Bond series, of course. We're at 24. No Time to Die will be 25. But that's a pretty successful film series, I would say. And the things about what's funny to me about the MCU is even the MCU films I think are the least successful, say the Iron Man 2 and Thor the Dark World or something like that. And I am an Iron Man 3 fan, so don't bring me that noise. But I understand why people don't like it. But I think it's pretty damn successful. I would just go back and say, look, don't worry so much in Iron Man 2 about laying the groundwork to set the rest of the MCU. That'll take care of itself. And I would say for Thor the Dark World, it seems like make your villain more dynamic. You cut him down. You know, Christopher Eccleston as Malekith, I would like to have seen more about him. So, you know, why not do that? Wouldn't that be better? I think you would like it better. But that's about it. I mean, I don't know. I'd be curious to hear what you have to say. Uh-oh. Christopher McCulloch is here, and he always writes interesting letters. Mr. Burnett, their era might have passed, but cinema culture is beggared when we lose places like the Cinerama in Seattle and the Uptown in D.C. Movie palaces were more than ostentatious dressing for a commercial storefront. They represented the pride that Americans took in an art form that we were almost wholly responsible for. Whenever these places are taken from the public, you've changed the dynamic of people's relationship to art. I wholeheartedly agree. That is very well put. I love that idea. You're absolutely right. Movie palaces represented the pride that Americans took in an art form that we were almost wholly responsible for. Goddamn right, sir. I mentioned in a letter before that the great event in my young life that watching The Phantom Menace was. The theater I saw it at was indeed the Uptown. This wasn't because I demanded my parents take me there. It was because, just like it had been in 1977, they knew the Uptown was the only theater appropriate for watching something of this magnitude. The circle was complete. My relationship with the Uptown also mirrors my experience with theater going in general. As you can imagine, nothing could really top going to the first premiere of a Star Wars film in 20 years, film notwithstanding, except the film, yeah. But my infrequent visits to the Uptown throughout the years would follow a decline in the movie-going experience at large. The last film I saw at the Uptown was The Hobbit in 3D. During the show, one of the dual projectors died. Oh. Have you ever thought you were having a stroke during a movie because you lost vision in one eye? As you've said, economic interests are important, so I try not to feel resentment that, because of what I consider a passing Hollywood fancy, the Uptown was forced to purchase digital dual projectors. I do resent they dismantled their 70mm projector in order to do so. This is what I think of when Scorsese talks about art and park rides. It's probably better in LA, but the direction movie theaters have moved in as far as customer experience is disquietingly similar. With a half hour of TV commercials before your movie, reclining seats, cup holders, personal air conditioning, and even hinged tables for all the food you've come to eat while a movie plays in the background. But what is more disruptive than all of that is the environment it fosters. You've made your theater to compete with the living room, so it's no surprise people will behave like they're watching a TV at home, with people half watching a film made to be half watched. When the theater was a place of awe and pride, people could treat what was within the same. Something else Washington has that you can't find anywhere else is the Smithsonian Institution, thanks to which I grew up watching IMAX shorts before the format made many inroads into Hollywood. These days, they even show big commercial films. They might have real IMAX screens and projectors, but as enjoyable as watching a film... They might have real IMAX screens and projectors, but as enjoyable is watching a film with an audience made slightly more self-conscious from experience of walking through a museum to get to the box office. So as far as I'm concerned, if they built a museum around the Cinerama and the Uptown, it would be appropriate. It only would be appropriate. Christopher, either Statler or Waldorf today. P.S. I found this video of the projection booth at the Uptown, 1997, projecting Return of the Jedi, no less, with a little bit of the exterior, if you're interested. Warning, volume. I'm going to put this in the live chat. So, here you go. Here is this video. I'm going to watch this. I love movie theater videos. Check that out. I love that I think that's such a great, what a great thing that you point out, that our movie theaters were a testament to the way because they were palatial, because it was celebrating the form. It was celebrating movies as a whole. I love that idea. I think that's amazing. Yeah. Let's see. Oh, you know what? Julius goes on. It was one of two. I didn't realize that. Let me start again. Another little-known fact in real life about the Miners team that won the championship in Glory Road: practically all the members of that squad, especially the black ones, either graduated from college or ended up a few classes short, while the Kentucky team, led by Coach Adolph Rupp, and which included All-American Pat Riley, yes, that Pat Riley, were nowhere near as close to a degree, even at the end of their collegiate careers. Fascinating. That's fascinating. David Crabtree sends in a tip and says, some of the so-called chick flicks that I love: Steel Magnolias, Footloose, Can't Buy Me Love, Some Kind of Wonderful, 13 Going on 30, Cutting Edge, and countless others. Oh, and by the way, I was a high school jock and a member of the National Honor Society. That is good for you, sir. Wait a minute, dude. Come on. Some Kind of Wonderful is so awesome. That might be my favorite John Hughes movie. I love it. It's basically Pretty in Pink done correctly. I love Some Kind of Wonderful. Love it. And all Steel Magnolias is good. Footloose, I never thought of that as a chick flick necessarily. I saw that when it opened. I liked it. But that's a good list. A good list, sir. Throgs Baseball sends in a tip and says, top 10 baseball films. 10, The Naked Gun. 9, Rookie of the Year. 8, 61. 7, Mr. Baseball. 6, Major League. 5, For Love of the Game. I like that movie too. 4, The Sandlot, another good movie. 3, A League of Their Own, so good. 2, Bull Durham. And 1, The Bad News Bears. Buttermaker is God. Walter fucking Matthau. Yeah, the original Bad News Bears is so good. It's so good. I love it so much. That's a really good list. A really good list. Dangerous Lee sends in a tip and says, hi, Rob. I've always wanted a true extended cut of X-Men with all the deleted scenes seamlessly incorporated. Will we ever get one? I like the film as it stands, but I've always felt like it was too short. Thanks, X-Men 20. I don't know. I like the deleted scenes. Look, I wish it could have been longer. I do. We'll see. Oh, let's see if did Brian get back to me? He hasn't written me back yet. We'll see. Anyway, this is a lengthy letter from Jeffrey Mao. Not Jeffrey Moy, but Jeffrey Mao. Greetings, Rob. Greetings, Rob. I've also got a video from Dieter that I'm going to play tomorrow. Greetings, Rob. One of the things that I deal with as a father is how to properly guide my children's life development, both as people and as future contributors to society in whatever field of work that they enter. The balance that needs to be struck between encouraging them to develop their passions and find fulfilling work, as well as ensuring that they satisfy the practical considerations of life's needs, is quite challenging. I don't believe anyone has the right answer, nor is it possible to have a right answer. For every person who is encouraged by their friends and family to pursue their dreams and passions, whether it be in the arts, entertainment, design, writing, or sports, I'm sure there was another person who was told that they needed to get a real job and get their heads out of the clouds. You can't really blame people who tell these kids no, because the chances of being successful are very low. They have every reason to be practical and realistic. It takes courage and confidence to tell your child, or a young person that looks up to you, you know what? Forget the odds, chase your dreams, do what you want to do. Rob, I know you don't have kids, But as a kid looking to get into filmmaking, I'm sure that your parents were very supportive and encouraging. They were. I can't imagine them saying, Bobby, they did call me Bob or Rob or Bobby. They never called me Rob. Bobby, you need to get a real job. You know, a doctor or a lawyer. Forget USC Film School. You should have studied accounting at Evergreen State. My cousin's firm is always looking for people. You can do a summer internship with them. But I can imagine lots of other parents saying that to kids who dream of going to Hollywood or to the space program or into professional sports. I think of my own cousin, Francis, whom I wrote about before. He aspired to be a comic book artist and did make money off it, but never made it as a career. His mom wanted him to go to law school, and he did for about a year. Even though he didn't make it as a comic book artist, it did lead to work in the video game business, in which he's worked for 30 years now, both in publishing and event management. While it would certainly be considered not a real job compared to others, it was never easy. He had problems with his marriage early on, the constant travel kept him away from his kids, and job uncertainty and stress hasn't been great on his health and weight. So just because you work in a field that others would think is pretty cool, it's still a job and comes with all of the same stuff that jobs come with. On the other hand, I think of Rob Liefeld or Todd McFarlane or Jim Lee or John Byrne growing up. Did all of them get encouragement to make comic books their career, or were they faced with adversity and negativity about trying to make it in such a childish endeavor? I can't imagine that all of them were openly and enthusiastically encouraged by their family and friends. They must have encountered some resistance, naysayers and the like. I wonder what allowed them to succeed and prove the naysayers, if there were any, wrong. Was it sheer talent, or was it perseverance? A never-give-up attitude? What is it that steers a young kid or person away from pursuing their passions and their dreams and into a, quote, real job? Or what is it that drives them to keep at it no matter what? I think the ultimate reason is, well, competition, right? To be frank, my cousin just wasn't good enough, and he would admit it to himself. He was good, but not good enough to get into a Marvel or a DC or a Dark Horse or whoever else was around then. In all those different professions and what I call the imagination industry, ooh, I like that, you need to be damn good to be able to make a living out of it. Thankfully, my cousin had enough education and experiences to transition into something else. He still enjoyed drawing on the side, though I'm sure he will always have that regret that it didn't work out. I look at my son, and he loves to do things with his hands, whether it be Legos, drawing, building stuff, or his latest passion, origami. It's never been anything that I've pushed him to do. He just likes doing it. I know he's obviously pretty good with spatial recognition, imagining the way things look in his mind, and his math is pretty good all around. However, I don't know exactly how you would ever prove that being really good at origami can translate into a career in engineering or design or the sciences. I mean, my wife wants our kids to become doctors and scientists, which is a very typical Asian thing to do. There's obviously a lot of benefits to pursuing those fields, but also a lot of studying, a lot of hardship, and of course a lot of money spent on it, and you still don't know if you're going to make it. At some point, my kids will have to compete to get where they're going to go. I'm sure that Elizabeth had to apply for and be accepted to art centers. She did, and she got a scholarship. I assume that you don't just walk in and say, hey, I want to take classes here. Same with you, Rob. You had to apply to USC Film School, and given its prominence, I'm sure not everyone who wanted to get in could get in. Many were probably rejected. There's always barriers along the path that anyone takes in their life and career. Part of what made me think about this topic was I think it was you who retweeted a video of Ron Perlman talking about how his father gave up a career as a jazz trumpeter to get a real job and support his family. While it was sad that his father never was able to fully pursue his dreams, it also could be that no matter how good he thought he just wasn't good enough, honestly. I mean, how many people in the world can make a solid living playing the trumpet? A few thousand? Then someone in the thread brought up the idea of the universal basic income as a way that would have allowed him to keep playing the trumpet and still be able to raise his family. I have many issues with the idea of the universal basic income in this context. Who's going to pay for it? That's a lot of money you're talking about. Say there's UBI and everyone decides that they're going to go to Hollywood or start their own business or quit their job and do something else. I'll tell you what, soon the real economy is going to go in the tank because there's nobody doing the real jobs, the essential jobs. Society needs a certain number of people to perform a certain number of jobs at all times, even if it seems heartless and cruel that anyone whose dreams are dashed and has to settle for a real job. Well, society needs you to be able to do that job. How does this apply to our realm of the Post-Geek Singularity? Well, look at Star Trek. They say that it's a post-scarcity society where no one goes hungry or lacking the necessities of life. Materialism and the pursuit of money as a means to provide for oneself and one's family is no longer the driving force. I don't know exactly how that all works, but I can tell you that it just doesn't mean anyone can do anything they want. Just look at Starship construction. The ship has to be designed by many people. Every part of it has to be designed, tested, redesigned, retested. Even if you can replicate every part, the replicator needs to be designed and built. It needs to be maintained. The supply of energy, it has to be provided, maintained, and generated. All these tasks and many more have to be performed by people who have been trained, educated, and have the experience to do the job well. This applies to every class of starship, ship, and vehicle in Starfleet. We're just talking about Starfleet. This applies to every other civilian sector as well. Even in a so-called post-scarcity world, essential jobs are needed. There needs to be some kind of mechanism in place that ensures that enough people end up in enough jobs that ensure that society runs properly. I kind of feel that this idea of post-scarcity, as always having a parachute or a safety net available, would actually make people weaker and less willing to take risks and put their eggs in one basket. Look at someone like Kirk. What drove him to want to become a starship captain at such a young age? He clearly was never meant to be anything else but a starship captain. He had a fervent drive and no backup plan in case he failed. But how does that work in a society where everyone has a safety net? Picard says that the prime motivation now is to better oneself. But why? Why better oneself if the failure to do so has no true consequences? There's a phrase in Chinese that translates to eat bitter. People who have eaten the bitter know what it's like to have to toil, to have to sacrifice, to have gone through really tough times. They strive to better themselves. Brian Singer, wait, sorry, just in the middle of this, he texted me. I'm not opposed to it. It would probably be the first time I've done any interview in pretty much any kind of the last 3 years. Great. There you go. Let me continue on with this. Picard says the prime motivation now is to better oneself. But why? Why better oneself if the failure to do so has no true consequences? There's a phrase in Chinese translates to eat bitter. People who have eaten the bitter know what it's like to have to toil, to have to sacrifice, to have gone through really tough times. They strive to better themselves because they know what it's like not to have had anything, to be poor or even be a beggar. After having eaten bitter, they never want to go back. Where's the Star Trek universe equivalent to eating bitter? I guess if I have a point to make about anything, it's that the society that we need is probably not what's in Star Trek, but it's also not what we have now. It could be better. We should be able to encourage and allow talented kids who want to get into the imagination industry a decent shot at it. I don't mean, yeah, sure, kid, you can work in Hollywood, pick your spot. They need to compete for it. They need to be allowed at least to get to the point where they realize either they are good enough or not. No one wants a world where doors are slammed shut in people's faces before they're even opened. But everyone should get enough practical, usable education and training so that if it doesn't work out, you can always go and do something else. Like you've mentioned many times before, education should be a national priority, but not in the way that it's done now. We're not training people to have multiple job skills, to speak multiple languages. Life can change pretty quickly, and sometimes we need to adapt quickly. While my wife wants our kids to be scientists and doctors, she also knows that they need more than that. So language is a big priority, and having the ability to do at least 2 different jobs is another one. However, it seems that these lessons are only learned by those who have eaten bitter. And if they could be applied to all of society, we could be a lot better off. We need to be able to properly balance allowing the dreamers to pursue their dreams while ensuring that the real essential jobs are performed, are valued, and are properly rewarded. Maybe in a better world, Perlman's father could have been able to keep playing trumpet while still having a real regular job and never feel like he had to give up on anything. Well, Jeff, you knocked this one out of the park. What a great letter this is. I really appreciate you writing in, especially from the perspective of a father. In my own life, I can only say, my friend, I can only say this. In my own life, I can only say this. I don't know why, at a very young age, I was attracted to the imagination industry. I don't know why I started to love movies. I don't know why I couldn't get enough of books, storytelling. I don't know why I loved all of this stuff, but I did at a very young age. The byproduct of that for me as a kid was all of the things that I loved were not coming to me. I had to go out and get them. And a byproduct of that was, okay, if I liked a science fiction book and I wanted to go get another one, I could go to the bookstore, and I knew how to ride our public transportation system at 10. So if I wanted something, like waiting for my parents to do it for me was, I didn't like that. So I'm like, I'm not going to wait till Saturday when my mom's can, my parents are busy during the week or whatever. So I was like, okay, I could get on the bus and I could go down from one end of Mercer Island, where I'm from, to the other, where Island Books was. I could get myself there. Then I could go to the lady, because I like to look around. It didn't take long. The bus, it took me like 5 minutes to walk from my house to the bus stop. I get on the bus, and I could literally get off the bus and walk less than 5 minutes to the bookstore and go in there and like see if they had the book I wanted. If they didn't, then I would talk to the ladies behind the counter about, could you order this for me? And so all of the things that I wanted, I mean, I was very motivated to get them myself. And I mean, I liked all that. And I think I really believe that, look, I understand why parents and why Asian parents, you want to succeed, your culture, the culture has certain things that are built into it. And being a doctor and a lawyer has a lot of things going for it. But one, you make good money. And two, you have to study hard, you have to be diligent, and it shows discipline and all of those things. So becoming a doctor or a lawyer, beyond being something that parents just want to be able to tell their friends their kids have become, those are also very disciplined. It takes a long time to do that. What I think is wrong with what's happened with education, and again, I don't have kids, but Elizabeth, I've seen, I've seen Elizabeth's kids grow up and go through junior high and high school. I think the thing that's missing that we had when I was going to school, 35 years ago or whatever, is that our school, our public school, there was a lot of stuff that you could sample, you could do, if you wanted to get in a band, you could. I played trumpet for a while myself. If you wanted to play sports, you could. If you wanted to have art class, there was theater, there was a newspaper. There was all of this stuff. And like, for instance, I was on the newspaper staff because I liked writing, but I also liked the idea of making the newspaper. It was fun. Like, it wasn't we didn't have computers that could lay it out. You had to put it up on chart packed thing and tape it all up, and I loved all that. And so there was a lot of exploration when I was a kid that I could get involved in. And again, the home video industry, because I love movies, and the only way to get movies then when VCRs were new, then it was like, ooh, I need to get another VCR. How do I connect the two? So I started to learn about electronics just as a result of me wanting movies. And how could I copy this? And when my friend would have a VCR, I'd be like, hey, man, you want to go rent 10 movies and bring your VCR over and we'll copy the tapes? And, and it was all these things were just adjuncts of my interests. And I think, I see kids today, and maybe they've always been this way, but where I was growing up, people had interests. And now when you have all this information coming to you, I think we need some kind of a national push. We have to completely recontextualize. I mean, we have to do a lot of changes, but I think society would benefit a lot if we turned education into not something that you're doing to get. You're not being educated as a stepping stone for a job or a stepping stone in life. Education should be its own reward. I mean, the smarter you are about a number of things, it makes your appreciation of life much better. If you have an inquisitive, it maybe will instill in more of an inquisitive. I mean, having an education about something, being able to go anywhere, to travel and find something to talk about with anybody is a good thing. And I feel that the more people are educated and you don't make it a chore, education should be a joy. It shouldn't be a chore. You shouldn't be worrying about it. Now we have a whole educational system that's all about testing. It's designed so you can take a test and get certain grades. And how does that foster critical thinking? We need to make education and healthcare should be at the forefront of our national health. Nothing else matters. We need an educated, healthy population. More than anything else, it all begins there. And I think, when you get people together and have groups of people learning together, it's I mean, I went to a really great public school system. I was very, very lucky to go to one of the best public school systems in the United States. And it was a great place to go to school because there was all these opportunities. And what was interesting was when I was a kid, my parents were very respectful of my interest because I was interested in a million different things. And we were in schools that fostered and pushed that kind of interest further. And so you could choose, you could be a part of so much. And that's exploring these things is how you decide what you want to be. You know, if I can't imagine if my parents said, you have to be a lawyer. I'd be like, do I? You know, I mean, what should be great is you give all these kids as many opportunities to explore. People would find things on their own. Like, no one told me to be interested in what I was interested in. It happened. And I think that's what we need. We need to do that. And we need to teach kids that learning is its own reward. The more you know, the more the world becomes an interesting place. And I don't know. But that's kind of how I've always thought about it. That was a great... That was great. A great thing. Let me see. Gerald is here and he says, space exploration is a noble thing. What else is noble? An interview with John Noble. Well, tomorrow, ladies and gentlemen, if you go to the Mainframe Comic-Con, I will be interviewing John Noble tomorrow for a half an hour. As a matter of fact, why don't I figure out when? So the Mainframe Comic-Con tomorrow, the schedule is, I will find out for you and I will tell you exactly. So Sunday, okay. John Noble, I am interviewing John Noble at 10 a.m. 10 a.m. tomorrow, Pacific Standard Time. That's 10 a.m. Pacific Time tomorrow. And then right afterwards, I am interviewing Lisa Emery and Jessica Francis Dukes, who plays the FBI agent on the 3rd season of Ozark. I got both of them, which is going to be quite fun and exciting. So join me at 10 a.m. tomorrow for John Noble, and stick around because the way they do it, it zips right into the next interview. So 10 a.m. And if you just go to mainframecomiccon.com, you can find me there. So that's cool. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to end this episode of Robservations, episode number 430. My God, 430. I want to thank you all for being here. Wait a minute, I've got a few things I forgot to wait. A couple of Baseball Throg sends in a tip and says, my kids don't understand what weekend baseball or community baseball was like back in the 70s and 80s. There's a lot of truths in that film. Now community baseball is overrun by participation trophies. It doesn't give kids fire in the gut to return. You know, do you go on? Who's on First Throg goes on to say, I miss baseball. I'm a diehard science fiction. I'm a diehard San Francisco Giants fan, and gone are the days of Vince Scully and Joe Garagiola types on TV or in the booth on radio describing through timeless stories or anecdotes, players, stat pages, rosters. I miss that too. Radio isn't the same. I agree. Alexander Wilson goes on and says, if you have Quinn Snyder on, I have like 10 questions ready to go. I know 2 people who graduated from my high school that work with him at Duke. I'm a big baseball or basketball head. If you can go deep on some questions, if you like. You know what, Alexander? That would be fantastic. If you could do that, then I could submit those questions to Quinn in advance, and it might convince him to do it. To do it. I think it'd be great. That's a great idea. So let's do that, and I'll contact Quinn. But anyway, where was I? I was going to end. Oh, what you're going to say about Throg, about weekend baseball. I grew up playing like boys club baseball. So you started out playing t-ball, and then softball, and then you were in the farm leagues. And I played baseball. I really liked it. I played baseball all the way into junior high school. And I agree. I mean, I think so much has been lost. Participation trophies. I went and saw my sister's son. My sister has 2 kids, Logan and Peyton. And Peyton loves playing sports. and I went to watch Peyton play soccer, and they don't keep score. And I was like, what? My sister's like, yeah, they don't keep score. I'm like, what? What? It was this idea. This is another thing that I think is just monumentally stupid. Why? Where is this idea that children are supposed to be protected from the world? I mean, I understand we don't want them to be physically hurt, but it's crazy that you wouldn't keep score playing sports. Like you said, Throg, fire in the belly. I thought that was the dumbest shit ever. And you know what the worst part is? The kids are keeping score in their minds. They know what's up. But the parents are like, oh, no, we can't keep score. I'm like, you know what? Looking at what, like my parents were not like that at all. It's like we kept score. Like I've told this story before. Like my father and I was in Boy Scout. I wasn't a Boy Scout. I was a Cub Scout, and then I was a Weeblo. And then I just got too busy. Otherwise, I would have continued on. I like Scouts. But we were did the Pinewood Derby. And the Pinewood Derby is when you make a pinewood, out of pine wood, you make a little car, and you race them down a track. Well, we lived in Seattle, so half the kids had fathers that were Boeing engineers. And you could tell the fathers made the cars for them. My dad and I prided ourselves when we made the car together. I designed it, and he'd help me work on it, and he'd put graphite in the wheels to get it to spin. But we would never win. We'd always come in like second place. And my dad would always apologize to me, and he's like, Bobby, my dad was the vice president of an insurance company. He'd be like, Bobby, I'm sorry I'm not a Boeing engineer. Like he was really apologetic. I'm like, Dad, you don't have to be a Boeing engineer. Like, it's cool. We're still having fun. And what was cool was I have a Pinewood Derby car that we made that would be in my room after that, forever. I don't have any of my Pinewood Derby cars. I wonder what happened to them. We must have done it like 4 or 5 times. And it was fun. I loved the Pinewood Derby races. It was, it was gravity. You'd put them on the big track. It was awesome. It was like having how you'd build. I don't know if anybody else did this, but we used to build these gigantic. I had a 2-tiered backyard, and we used to build these gigantic Hot Wheels tracks when you put the tongues in between underneath, and you use the tongues would put two tracks together. I love that shit. Anyway, I could go on and on. I've got to get off this show. So I want to bring an end to Robservations episode 430. I want to thank you to the moderating staff of Mike Bodden, of Detective Jim Boyers, his wife Heidi, and Greg Smith, and Louis Yu, and Jordy Lyons, and of course the Richard for running all the watch parties. Go find the Richard on the Post-Geek Singularity Facebook page. Go find him on the Whining About Movies Facebook page. By the way, Whining About Movies on Monday night at 6 p.m. Whining About Movies will be Rian Johnson's debut film, Brick. That's right, Brick. If you have not seen Rian Johnson's debut movie, Brick. It's Brick. Check it out. So thank you to the moderators. I want to thank everybody for your generous support of this channel. It is very much appreciated. I want to thank all the very thoughtful letter writers. What a great bunch of letters today. Thank you very much for that. Dieter Bastian fires. Dieter from Deutschland, my German angel, is here, and he says, well, Rob, soccer without a score, are you kidding me? Dude, I know. It is decidedly not metal. It is not Ronnie James Dio. It is not good. I don't know why you would do that. Boromir's Ghost says, can you ask your father why he treats Faramir so badly? He tries hard, always willing. Come on, Pops. That will be fun. I can't wait to talk to John Noble at 10 a.m. tomorrow. Tune in, Boromir's Ghost. All right, that brings me to an end of Robservations 430. And remember, every person you meet has a story to tell that you have yet to hear, and all you have to do is listen. And with that, I will say to everyone, as always, have a better day.